Chapter 405. Although the star ring hadn't appeared yet, the sky was about to darken. This made Lu Heng very worried and regretful. It's all my fault. If I hadn't forced the child to learn how to fly quickly. She sobbed in a low voice. It's going to be dark soon. What if she meets misfortune? That child is so weak. I'm sorry too. Su Shenxing scratched his head. I'm sorry, I seem to have gone a little overboard. In short, the most important thing now is to find King Kong quickly. That's right. Speaking of this, Lu Heng suddenly stood up. Let's split up and search. We must find her before dark. After saying that, she quickly ran out. Let's go out and search too. Because of some guilt, Su Shenxing also brought the bee-steered girl and Dehei out to search for King Kong. After searching outside for a while, the bee-steered girl's ears suddenly pricked up. Ah, there's King Kong sent here. Fortunately, the bee-steered girl's nose was more sensitive than expected. She actually found King Kong sent outside. With her leading the way, Su Shenxing and the others quickly found King Kong's trace. The other party was at the back of a small forest, on a small cliff full of green grass. He was facing the sea, and his face was full of confusion. She hugged her knees and sat there in a daze, looking at the sun that was about to set over the sea. The evening sun wasn't as glaring as usual. The orange light was exceptionally gentle. Su Shenxing grabbed the bee-steered girl who was stupidly about to rush up and say hello. After thinking for a moment, he finally decided to go alone. He whispered to Pomeranian and Dehei to go back to the cafe first. If they saw Lu Heng, they should inform her that they had found King Kong. Then he walked through the small forest and came to the edge of the cliff. What are you doing here? Su Shenxing said softly. The girl's delicate back trembled, but she didn't answer. Instead, she continued to be silent. About today's training, I'm sorry. I seem to have gone a little overboard. Therefore, Su Shenxing spoke first. No. But contrary to his expectations, the young girl opened her mouth and said, You did the right thing. Birds that can't fly have no value at all. No, no, no. Purely from an economic point of view, chickens were undoubtedly the most valuable to humans. Of course, Su Shenxing wouldn't be so disappointed as to complain in such a place. He could tell that the girl seemed to have something buried deep in her heart. Perhaps this was a chance for her to spill her guts. Similarly, as a friend of birds, I have no value if I can't fly. The girl continued, but the content of her words was filled with a sense of self-abuse. I've always known. From the very beginning, as long as I remember being a friend, my friends in the residential area would always laugh at me, saying that I'm a bird but can't fly. I'm not open-minded at all. Even if I know that my friends don't have any ill intentions, if I'm mocked, I'll be very sad and want to bury my face in my own wings. But I, who have become friends, don't even have wings. So I ran away, from the residential area to the commercial area. Me, I'm super weak. I can't even escape well. If it wasn't for the Xiaohei's help and meeting Lu Heng in the end, I'm afraid I would have starved to death on the way. Lu Heng was the first friend I met who didn't laugh at me for being a bird but not being able to fly. Because of this, she has been working hard with me to research how to fly. At that time, I was very touched. I felt that as long as I had Lu Heng, it didn't matter what I did. As long as I could be with her, I was willing to do anything. But I was too weak and couldn't do anything well. I would only be a burden to Lu Heng. Actually, I know that Lu Heng yearns for the sky. She wants to be able to fly in the sky. Even if she never said it, I know very well. If the one with wings wasn't me but Lu Heng, she would definitely be able to fly in the sky with confidence and joy. I also think that she's almost at the limit of her tolerance towards my incompetence. That's why she's been desperately trying to make me learn how to fly so that I can leave here. As expected, a useless friend like me isn't welcomed by anyone. The girl buried her face in her arms and her voice became softer and softer. A gust of night wind blew, causing the girl's body to shrink even smaller. Su Shenxing sighed, then grabbed the girl's collar and dragged her towards the ruins of the coffee shop. What are you doing? The girl struggled. But unlike her valiant name, the strength of her struggle was too weak. Moreover, Su Shenxing found that although her body was about the same size as a Pomeranian, she was clearly much lighter than a Pomeranian. As expected, it was because of birds. I'm not good at persuading people with words. Su Shenxing said, but instead of feeling sorry for yourself here, I think it's better for you to go back and see for yourself. If Lu Heng really sees you as a burden, she won't be so worried about you, right? That's just because she has a good personality. Regarding Su Shenxing's words, King Kong said without hesitation, no matter who it is, she'll still care about them. Your favorite food is peas and corn, right? Huh? Does this have anything to do with the current topic? And where did you find out? King Kong frowned and asked while struggling. If she really treats everyone equally, then why is your dinner the only one that's specially made? Su Shenxing said slowly, in a place like this, it's not easy to get peas and corn. If she really wants to drive you away, why would she specially prepare your favorite dinner? This is just, King Kong still wanted to argue, but in the end, he couldn't find a reason. That's why I hate persuading people with words. In short, no matter what, it's better to confirm it with your own eyes. Su Shenxing didn't say anything more. He just carried King Kong, who was also silent, and quickly rushed to the abandoned coffee shop. The sky was getting dark, and even the magnificent star ring was faintly discernible on the horizon. If they couldn't return to the shop with lights before it was completely dark, then there might be some trouble ahead. However, at this moment, the bee-steered girl hurriedly ran over. Little Su, bad news. There's a super big gui by the beach. Lu Heng thought that King Kong was eaten by it and wanted to save King Kong. Chapter 406. The specter that the bee-steered girl mentioned was indeed terrifyingly huge. Even before they reached the beach, they could already see it from the treetops. To put it simply, the appearance of the hairy this time was a gigantic octopus monster with countless legs. If it was placed in some meaty anime, it would undoubtedly be the type that would provide the audience with an entire episode's worth of entertainment. But in reality, this monster that was as tall as a 10-story building only gave off a feeling of terror. At first, Su Shenxing was puzzled as to why the specter that was afraid of sunlight would appear in a place where the sky was not completely dark yet. But when he saw its true form, he vaguely understood the reason. Originally, when the gigantic specter was exposed to sunlight, its melting speed would slow down. But now, the specter was wrapped in a thick layer of seawater, and through the refraction and reflection of the seawater, it further weakened the damage of sunlight to the specter. Therefore, even though the sky was not completely dark yet, the specter was already in a state where it could move around. I see, since the specter was not a cluster of light but some kind of energy field, the cluster of light was just a reflection of the energy field. In Su Shenxing's previous investigation, the fist-sized cluster of light energy field was the size of a basketball, but the overflowing energy field of the gigantic specter was actually smaller. For example, the sandworm-like specter from before had an energy field that was only a centimeter larger than its body, tightly wrapping around it like a layer of invisible skin. It was not difficult to conclude that a gigantic specter was made up of many smaller specter, and the more of them there were, the stronger and denser the energy field would be. And now, the density of this specter's energy field was even higher. Based on the projection model of the sandworm-like specter from before, the size of its cluster of light should be even larger. But this time, the specter had given up on its gigantic size and instead increased the density of its energy field. Then, it bound the seawater into the energy field, forming a layer of defense that looked like a carapace. It was obvious that the spectre should have some kind of evolutionary mechanism. If one day, the spectre could no longer form a carapace with seawater but a real stratum corneum or rock layer, then obviously, with its core wrapped in a thick carapace, it would no longer be afraid of sunlight and would become a dangerous existence that could even move in the day. Lu and I. King Kong was not afraid of the spirit at all. He rushed out of the bushes and came to the beach, shouting, "Where are you?" However, there was no response. There was no one on the beach except for a tentacle that was slowly sinking into the sea. Unlike a real octopus, the tentacles of the Harry did not have suction cups. At the tip of the tentacles was the head of a western dragon-like monster. Behind the monster's head, starting from the neck, were densely packed small tentacles as long as an adult's arm. Even though Su Shenxing didn't have trypophobia, he still frowned uncomfortably when he saw the tentacle. There was no doubt that they were too late. Hulu might have already been eaten. Lu and I. King Kong dashed towards the tentacle that had yet to leave the shore like a madman. However, before she could touch the tentacle, a huge mouth opened at the front of the tentacle. It was a four-petaled mouth, revealing jagged fangs and a bottomless throat. Then, the tentacle bit towards King Kong like a hunting python. Woof! The dog-eared little girl pounced on King Kong and pushed him to the ground, barely allowing him to avoid being eaten by the Harry's tentacle. The small tentacles on the tentacle took this opportunity to break through the water and wrap around the two of them. However, Su Shenxing had also arrived at this time. He got up and kicked the big tentacle away. It fell into the sea with a splash. However, it was only one tentacle after all. The other two tentacles entangled with each other and merged into a thicker tentacle, smashing towards Su Shenxing's head. Su Shenxing also propped up Cloud Scale, took 3 steps forward, and met the tentacle head-on. If a small stone flew towards you at a moderate speed and you threw it at the stone, what would the result be? Of course, as a small stone that was much harder than a hand, Su Shenxing was sent flying. Although this kind of attack basically didn't do much damage to him, the feeling of not being able to use his strength was terrible. Perhaps if he stood on the ground and used Cloud Scale to meet the opponent's attack, the damage would be higher. Previously, he used a similar method to blow up the monster's arm under the building. However, considering the softness of the beach, if he took the attack head-on, Su Shenxing might be buried in the sand. The situation now is really troublesome. Su Shenxing, who adjusted his posture in the air and finally managed to land steadily, muttered unhappily. At this time, he suddenly found a wooden stick by his feet. It might be debris that was washed up on the beach because of the tide. Chapter 407. Although Su Shenxing could use almost all weapons because of the protection, the thing he was best at was still the sword. There was an old saying in the martial arts world of the Celestial Empire: stick for a month, saber for a year, spear for a lifetime, sword for a lifetime. It referred to the difficulty of mastering weapons. Among them, the stick was the easiest, followed by the saber that only needed to be learned to hack and slash. The spear was even harder to master. Just the 3 most basic movements of moving, buckling, and stabbing were difficult to master without spending a considerable amount of time. Finally, there was the long sword, the king of all weapons. Of course, there was also a saying that the spear was harder to master than the sword. However, the swords of the other world were not the same as the swords of the ancient Celestial Empire. They were thicker and heavier, and the way of fighting was mainly hacking and slashing, unlike the long sword of the Celestial Empire, which was mainly piercing. If it had to be said, the way to use the two-handed sword was more inclined towards the saber. This was also the reason why the use of swords in the other world was so high. It was because this thing was just like the saber of the ancient Celestial Empire. A few slashes would cause damage, and it was a novice weapon. As for the simpler stick, the stick in the other world had basically evolved into a heavy weapon such as a mace or a war hammer. If you really used a stick to fight something like a chimera, I'm afraid it would be useless other than being funny. When Su Shenxing first crossed over to the other world, the first weapon he came into contact with was this kind of common two-handed long sword. After wandering around in the other world for a while, he thought that he had gained some strength and could show off a little by using weapons of a higher class. But then, the legendary Holy Sword appeared. As a result, as the person chosen by the Holy Sword, he could only continue to use swords while collecting more Holy Swords. And the weapons he used were basically limited to various types of Holy Swords. After that, with Su Shenxing's travel, after crossing over to one world after another, his understanding of the sword became more and more profound. He even had a similar feeling to the Master Dugu who could hurt people with flying flowers and leaves in Old Man Jin's novel. In the end, even a piece of foxtail grass could split open the heaven and earth of a world. In a sense, swordsmanship was one of the few skills that Su Shenxing had other than his own strength. It was even more exaggerated to say that he had mastered the purest ultimate of swordsmanship in the endless world. It was just that after returning to Earth and living a peaceful life for 2 years, ordinary battles could be settled with his fists. There was no need for him to take out his sword, so much so that he even forgot that he had such an earth-shattering cultivation of swordsmanship. After coming to this world, Su Shenxing had not been able to properly control his own power. If he used Roland Duel, he could easily destroy this world, but his own power was suppressed by Salted Fish's vengeance. Speaking of which, wasn't Salted Fish's aftertaste a little too long? But now, it seemed that it was fine even if he only had a little more strength than normal people. As long as he had a sword, or a substitute, in hand and relied on sword mastery, he could still deliver a slash that could cut through steel. Not sure if it was satisfied after eating the green python, or it was afraid of Su Shenxing's slash, but the spirit actually did not give chase. Instead, it turned to leave. Wait! King Kong stood on the shore and roared at the monster. Give me back the green python. No, it's out of my slash range. Su Shenxing tried to slash out with his slash again. The slash with sword mastery even split the ocean open, revealing the sunken city and the coral reefs that grew in the city. However, the stalker's true form was still some distance away from the shore, and now that it was running away, the slash marks only extended to a few places behind it before vanishing. After all, even if Su Shenxing had the indestructible sword mastery, the limitations of his power did not disappear, and the slash he swung only had the strength to fly a short distance, which was a far cry from the extent where he could have used the green foxtail to split the sky. Throwing aside the charred remains of the wooden stick in his hand, Su Shenxing looked at King Kong, who was holding his head and crying because there was nothing he could do. He did not know how good the spirit's digestive ability was, but it was clear that the green python was doomed. But it was not time to give up. After experiencing many seemingly impossible situations, Su Shenxing knew very well that if he did not persevere to the end, he would not know the result. So he quickly walked to King Kong, grabbed him by the collar, and lifted him up to his eyes. Listen, there's still one more chance. If you want to save the green python, fly. Fly. King Kong's mind was still in a daze, and his eyes were full of confusion. Take me and fly to the top of the monster's head, and then, Su Shenxing made a swinging motion with his empty hand. I'll cut it in half. Take advantage of that chance and save the green python. King Kong's mouth was slightly agape, and his tear-stained face was full of shock. What, do you think it's too reckless? Su Shenxing asked. No, the girl wiped her face carelessly to dry her tears, and the expression on her face became determined. I should say, please help me. That's good. Su Shenxing let go of his hand, and the girl subconsciously took 2 steps back and stood still. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Su Shenxing took a new wooden stick from the bee-steered girl, who was holding a pile of wooden sticks. I hope there won't be a problem. After doing everything he could, Su Shenxing could only pray. There won't be a problem. The bee-steered girl was still cheerful. King Kong loves the green python the most, she can definitely do it. And there's little Sue, you're a friend who can create miracles. Create miracles? Su Shunxing couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect this girl to have such a high opinion of him, even though he was already allergic and couldn't use much of his power. But then, his expression softened. Perhaps. At the same time, as if in response to his words. King Kong, who was standing on the shore, had his dense long hair fluttering in the wind. Then, accompanied by the girl's serious expression, his hair, which originally looked a little stiff, suddenly opened up and became a pair of broad and beautiful wings under the surprised gaze of Su Shunxing and the bee-steered girl. Colorful feathers slowly fell from the sky like snowflakes, adding a gorgeous color to the scene. "I'm ready," the girl with wings said. Chapter 408. It will be nightfall in 5 minutes. Since there are no lighting facilities nearby, I suggest that Mr. Su find a place to stay as soon as possible, De Hay suggested. Camping without prior notification is prohibited in the commercial district. "I'm sorry, De Hay, I have something else to do," Su Shunxing said helplessly to the big black robot. De Hay didn't correct Su Shunxing for once. Instead, he stared at Su Shunxing with the camera. After a while, it disappeared into the bushes. "Is it angry?" Su Shunxing asked the bee-steered girl in surprise. "I don't think so. Xiao Hei is always running around. It's abnormal for it to follow us for so long. Although I don't know if the other Xiao Hei can speak." The bee-steered girl shook her ears as she hugged a bunch of wooden sticks. Su Shunxing still found it strange, but it wasn't the time to study the robot's ecology. The pursuit had begun. To be honest, Su Shunxing felt that the science in this world, or the natural laws in some places, were definitely different from those on Earth. Although King Kong's wings were quite wide, they were still much smaller than things like hang gliders. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like it could carry a person. However, in fact, King Kong did rely on that pair of unscientific wings to fly. That wasn't all. She even flew with Su Shunxing, and it looked like she still had energy to spare. Although in theory, this should be King Kong's virgin flight, she flew surprisingly well. It didn't look like it was her first time flying. She spread her wings and skimmed across the surface of the sea. It didn't take long for her to catch up with the octopus monster, Mischief. The octopus monster, Mischief, also noticed Su Shunxing and the others. It immediately controlled a few of its tentacles to attack them, but King Kong nimbly dodged them all. However, the closer he got to the opponent, the faster and more flexible the opponent's attacks became. The number of tentacles attacking also increased. With King Kong's flying speed, he could only get a little closer. When King Kong flew through the gap formed by the intersection of the two tentacles at a low altitude, the huge body of the octopus monster appeared in front of them. Su Shunxing knew it was time. "Hold on, I'm going to make my move." Oh! In the next moment, Su Shunxing swung his own slash. However, the moment he swung it, he realized that the situation was not good. Because the previous two strikes were swung while standing on the ground, all the reaction force was borne by the ground. In addition, Su Shunxing's body was insanely sturdy, so he did not notice that the sword mastery slash had much recoil. However, now that he was flying in the sky with King Kong, all the recoil of the slash was borne by King Kong. King Kong, who did not expect such a strong recoil, was pushed back a distance. Naturally, the slash missed and did not hit the octopus monster's body. The powerful slash easily cut off a few tentacles on one side of the octopus monster and split the sea surface, leaving a huge mark in the underwater city. Like the previous one, the tentacles exploded like a water balloon and splashed a lot of water. Many light balls flew out from inside, but there was no sign of green. I'm sorry," King Kong's face turned pale. Of course, She knew the consequences of not being able to hold on. The wooden stick in Su Shenxing's hand was also shattered into pieces like the previous one. If she went back to get it now, it might be too late. Throw me at the monster, Su Shenxing suddenly said without rhyme or reason. Wait a minute, what did you say? King Kong asked in surprise. In just a few seconds, Su Shenxing had thought it through. The only plan now was to let King Kong airdrop him and let him be eaten by the octopus monster. Then, he would use the method he learned from the sandworm to find green and let it spit him out. That's the only way now. Su Shenxing explained his plan concisely. You must be kidding. How can this work? That's right, it was very risky and the success rate was very low. However, since he had promised the bee-steered girl to create a miracle, he could not give up halfway. Su Shenxing thought to himself. Just as he was thinking about how to persuade King Kong, Wang Chong suddenly heard a voice. Little Su, over here. The bee-steered girl's voice came from behind them. Su Shenxing and the others looked in the direction of the voice and saw that the bee-steered girl was pushing a pile of wooden sticks like a swimming board. They did not know when she had started dog paddling and not far away. Although she was still some distance away from the spirit, she would enter the spirit's attack range after a while. She pulled out a wooden stick and threw it at Su Shenxing and the others. How reckless! Su Shenxing could not help but say with a dark face. I think the two of you are just as reckless, King Kong said in a tone that said, do you have the right to criticize others? But then she became serious. After dodging the octopus monster's attack, she swooped down and let Su Shenxing catch the wooden stick. Please, let's do it again. I won't fail this time. Even if you don't say it, I will do it. Thus, they launched another attack on the sea monster. After being hurt by Su Shenxing's slash, the octopus monster learned its lesson. This time, it used all of its tentacles to stop King Kong from moving forward. But this time, King Kong gave it his all. He shuttled back and forth in the deadly attack, just to create an opportunity for Su Shenxing to attack. And Su Shenxing did not let her down. The moment he saw the monster's body, he shouted, "It's coming. This time, hang in there." Okay. King Kong immediately adjusted his posture and made the final preparations. And Su Shenxing had also raised his spirit to the best state in these few seconds. A large amount of cloud scales gushed out and wrapped around the wooden stick, preventing it from being turned into ashes by the sword mastery before it could be swung. Ever since he defeated the demon king of the great demonic realm, he had not been so fired up for a long time. So he simply shouted in a very Chinibya manner. Look, in the name of Su Shenxing, the savior of the world, my wooden stick is burning like a bright red flame. It is calling for me to seize victory. Explode. Its name is, at this moment, the sun had completely sunk below the horizon. As if it was really burning, the wooden stick wrapped in red light was swung down. The unparalleled slash from the heavens and the earth perfectly split the sea monster, the sea, and the city under the sea into two. Open the sea. Chapter 409. Though it had a powerful aura, the spectre wouldn't die so easily. Even after being cut in half by Su Shenxing, the huge sea monster spectre had only turned into many small luminous spectre, and there was no telling when they would reassemble themselves. But the bigger problem now was that Lu was nowhere to be seen in those light blobs. How could this be? King Kong's voice became sorrowful. Could it be that Lu is already? Su Shenxing could only remain silent. Sure enough, this world was not that naive. In any case, it was already dark now, and those small light blobs had a tendency to gather towards them. King Kong had no choice but to gather his sorrowful mood. He brought Su Shenxing and the bee-steered girl back to the shore. Not sure if it was because he was too sorrowful or simply overloaded, but King Kong's flying speed was obviously much slower. The light blobs behind them were getting closer and closer. They would probably catch up with them soon. King Kong, leave me and this girl by the shore and go back to the cafe first. Seeing this, Su Shenxing could only say so. No. King Kong gritted his teeth and flew with all his might. I will never give up on anyone again. Su Shenxing said in his heart, no, that's not what I meant. The key was that whether it was Su Shenxing or the bee-steered girl with the indestructible protection, they would not be swallowed by the small light blobs. Therefore, it should not be a problem even if they went back a little slower. However, at this moment, the light blobs behind them suddenly gathered and turned into the shape of a big bird. Although the size of the big bird was far smaller than the sea monster, it was still the size of a bus. Now, even Su Shenxing felt that they should run away quickly. It did not feel good to be swallowed by this thing. Just as they were about to be caught by the bird-shaped light blobs, a strong light that was enough to make King Kong cover his eyes and scream was suddenly emitted from the beach. Su Shenxing and the bee-steered girl fell into the sea because of this. Behind them, the spirit was also reduced to ashes by the powerful beam of light. When Su Shenxing climbed ashore, he found a large searchlight on the beach. The wires behind the searchlight were connected to Dehei's body. It seemed to be powered by Dehei's battery. From the looks of it, Dehei did not leave just now. Instead, he went to look for the searchlight. Well done, Dehei. Su Shenxing, who was soaked all over, gave the robot a thumbs up. Please call me LB, Mr. Su. As usual, Dehei replied in an electronic voice, it is our duty to provide convenience to our customers. The business district is more tolerant of our customers, and many temporary agreements are easily passed. In addition, I had to borrow some external help to transport the lamp here in time. External force? Su Shenxing asked curiously. Then, he was splashed with water by the bee-steered girl who was trembling again. Xiao Hei, is this angle okay? The green-haired girl in a leather jacket poked her head out from behind the searchlight and asked. However, the big black robot did not pay any attention to her. Green? King Kong, whose eyes had recovered, cried and threw himself into the robot's arms. You weren't eaten by the spirit? Su Shenxing asked in surprise. That's because I walk slowly on land. The robot hugged King Kong and caressed King Kong's back. She replied shyly, when I got here, you guys had already flown away, and you guys had already swam away. I can't fly or swim, so I could only worry on the shore. I happened to see Xiao Hei moving something, so I went over to help. You walked slowly. Su Shenxing felt weak all over. Perhaps it was because they had been fighting for their lives here, risking their lives to kill a gigantic specter, but this specter was a little slower than the rest. Isn't it best that everyone is fine? The bee-steered girl, who was originally unhappy, returned to her cheerful self. Sure enough, little Su is a friend who can create miracles. You still dare to say that? Isn't this caused by your false military report? Su Shenxing knocked on the girl's head. The girl's ears drooped and her tail drooped, showing a pitiful expression. Then, Su Shenxing stopped abusing the animal and looked at the sea with emotion. Because of the searchlight, the sea was now sparkling. The originally dangerous light balls did not dare to come close and only floated on the surface of the sea like phosphorescent flames. The scene was unexpectedly beautiful. In the dusky sky, the shadow of the star ring could be vaguely seen. This was a beautiful scene that could never be seen on Earth. This is really great. King Kong, who was still in Green's arms, said in a muffled voice. Yes, it's great that everyone is safe. The bee-steered girl said with a silly smile. What a beautiful scene. Green was like Su Shenxing, looking at the rare scenery. If it wasn't for everyone, I definitely wouldn't be able to see such a scene in my life. To be able to end with a happy ending and to be able to see such a beautiful night scene, Su Shenxing suddenly felt that it was worth it. Battery, just as Su Shenxing was immersed in the emotions brought about by all this, Dehei suddenly fell to the ground with a thud and said in a voice similar to when the computer was down. Then, the searchlight dimmed. Why does Xiao Hei always drop the ball at times like this? The bee-steered girl raised Dahei and grumbled loudly as she looked at the mass of light coming at her from all directions. Then, she quickly ran to the cafe. Su Shenxing sighed helplessly and followed behind the girl. On the other hand, King Kong spread his wings and flew toward the abandoned cafe with Lu in his arms. In a sense, Su Shenxing had fulfilled his promise and taught King Kong how to fly. Therefore, King Kong agreed to help them get to the park. However, they couldn't just leave like this. If they wanted to get to the park, they needed to make some other preparations. Let's not talk about other things for now, but the raft must be made properly. Su Shenxing said seriously. Can't we just use the door plank? Green asked curiously. It's too narrow, Dehei might fall in. Su Shenxing pointed at Dehei, who was still charging in the corner. It's okay, Xiao Hei seems to be waterproof. No, that's not the main problem. Chapter 4:10. To be honest, Su Shenxing's handicraft skills were not high, so in the end, he just hastily tied the wooden door and a few wooden tables together to complete the preparations for crossing the residential area and heading to the park area. In addition, when Dehei used his own battery to turn on the searchlight, Su Shenxing was deeply inspired, so he specially put a few lights on the raft this time. Although according to the plan, if they set off in the morning, they should be able to reach the park area before dark, but there was nothing more untrustworthy than the so-called plan. If an accident happened and they had to stay on the sea for a night, then this light was undoubtedly one of the most reliable things they could rely on. By the way, after Dehei learned of Su Shenxing's plan, he very formally said to Su Shenxing, "My battery is not for commercial use, please don't use it without permission, at least pay some money," and so on. But all of his words were ignored by Su Shenxing. In addition, the relationship between LV Heng and King Kong seemed to have undergone a subtle change. LV Heng. I've learned how to fly, can I still continue to live with you? King Kong asked LV Heng hesitantly, as if he was worried that he would hear a negative answer. But of course, this kind of thing would not happen as a novel about healing introverts. Therefore, even the dullest bee-steered girl curiously asked Su Shenxing the next night, "Why does LV Heng smell like King Kong?" "Children don't need to know about this kind of thing, go to bed early, we still have things to do tomorrow." Therefore, on the third day, Su Shenxing, who felt that he might have tooth decay if he stayed any longer, decided to set off. The sea in the morning was calm, and the sky looked clear. It was a good day to set sail. After dragging the self-made raft into the sea, Su Shenxing and the others said goodbye to LV Heng. The two who needed to be separated for the time being were especially reluctant. LV Heng, remember to eat on time. King Kong, okay. LV Heng, you can't just eat peas, it's not good for your health. King Kong, okay. Lu Heng said, although you don't like to drink water, it's still very important to replenish your water supply on time. King Kong, okay. Lu Heng said, be careful at night. If you see that it's getting late, you have to find a place to stay. Don't, Su Shenxing, are you an old woman? In short, after their affectionate conversation was interrupted by Su Shenxing, the raft officially set sail. Of course, because of this, Su Shenxing received a lot of supercilious looks from King Kong. It seemed that this girl liked to be talked about. What a strange interest. The sea was quite wide, and King Kong could not always fly to pull the rope for them. So when King Kong rested, the bee-steered girl would jump into the sea and push the raft forward with her dog paddle. Su Shenxing had nothing to do on the raft, but because of this, he had a lot more time to think. Ever since he came to this world, he had been running all over the place because of various things. Only now did he have a chance to rest a little. Why did he come to this world? Although he was almost used to time travel, it was still the first time that he had suddenly transmigrated without any warning. And for some reason, Emily had not taken the initiative to contact him. Even if he tried to contact her, the response he received was that everything was normal. Putting aside the reason for his transmigration and his own situation, this world itself was quite strange. Where did this beast-eared girl come from? Where did the original humans of this world go? What was the original form of the spirit? According to the common argument in the ACG, it was not impossible that the spirit was a monster transformed from a human. But if that was the case, what happened to the humans? Why did they become such a monster? And to be honest, the destination of this trip was also very mysterious. Who was this teacher? Although the Pomeranian seemed to think highly of her, to put it bluntly, with that girl's IQ, even a swindler would be able to fool her. She really had no reference value. But it seemed that the other beast-eared girls also knew this teacher, and had a certain sense of respect for him. So for the time being, he could still look forward to it. Well, because he did not know whether it was male or female, he would temporarily use it to refer to it. Could it answer his current doubts? As a native of this world, did she know how to return to her original world? And this world was clearly desolate, but there were still some facilities that were still operating. For example, power generation facilities, water facilities, emergency food facilities for Dahe and the other robots. Obviously, it was very difficult to do without professional maintenance. So how did these facilities actually operate? Little Sue, what are you thinking about? The beast-eared girl who had just finished pushing the raft and climbed up the mountain asked Su Shenxing curiously. At this time, Su Shenxing noticed that there was an old red belt under the girl's neck. There was also a small golden bell on the belt. But this bell might have been broken. It did not make a sound, so Su Shenxing did not notice it. Nothing, the bell on your neck, is it this? I have had it for as long as I can remember. Although I don't know when I got it, it is very important to me. It is my treasure. Even if it's little Sue, I can't give it to you. Well, at most I can let you see it. The girl tilted her head and one of her ears drooped. After hesitating for a long time, she seemed to have made up her mind and asked, Little Sue, do you care? If that's the case, I can lend it to you to play with for a while. No, I'm just asking. Su Shenxing waved his hand. Because this bell was more delicate than the girl's clothes, it felt more artificial, so he was a little curious. But Su Shenxing knew that his brain was only at the level of an ordinary person. Even if he saw it, he probably would not get any useful information. And the difference between the two was too subtle. Maybe he was just overthinking. Mr. Su. Suddenly, King Kong, who was flying in the sky and holding on to the rope, called out to Su Shenxing. Originally, she also called Su Shenxing Little Sue like the beast-eared girl. But under Su Shenxing's strict protest, she finally called him Mr. Su Shenxing like Dahe. For some reason, until now, none of the beast-eared girls were willing to call Su Shenxing by his name. What's wrong? Su Shenxing, who was lying on the raft, suddenly jumped up like a carp. Is it a super large spirit attack, or a tornado or vortex? No matter what it is, bring it on. My wooden stick is already thirsty for blood. No, King Kong said helplessly, we've reached the park area. We've arrived? What happened to the accident? Chapter 411. After saying goodbye to King Kong, Su Shenxing and the others continued to go deeper into the park area. Su Shenxing's current appearance was a little comical. He had found a nylon rope from somewhere and tied several wooden sticks together. He carried them on his back. At first glance, he looked like an ancient Chai He Lang. Su Shenxing also knew that his image was a little subtle, but the situation was urgent. Now was not the time to care about his personal image. Unlike the entertainment district and the commercial district, the park area had the highest degree of naturalization. If it weren't for the fact that they could occasionally see some park facilities while trekking through the lush forest, it would be impossible to believe that this was actually a man-made park in the past. "Are you sure you didn't lead us the wrong way?" Su Shenxing, who was struggling through the forest, asked gloomily. "It should be this way," the beast-eared little girl, who was originally full of confidence, now looked uncertain. "But I remember that there weren't so many trees in the past." Su Shenxing looked at the surrounding trees suspiciously. Although they weren't so thick that it would take a person to wrap their arms around them, most of them couldn't have grown in a short 3 to 4 years. This undoubtedly reduced the credibility of the child's words. Fortunately, she didn't screw up. After passing through the trees, what appeared in front of Su Shenxing was a large section of concrete that was tilted up due to the change of the site. In this section, a sewer opening was exposed. "It's here." The little girl wagged her tail and excitedly pointed to the sewer opening. "Teacher lives in here." It looked like this place had been abandoned for a long time. It was covered with moss, and it felt soft when stepping on it, like stepping on the meat of some animal. This sewer was different from the sewer in the commercial district. In general, it was much smaller, but it was enough for an adult to walk in without bending down. There seemed to be a lot of air holes at the top of the sewer that were connected to the ground. During the day, sunlight would shine through these air holes, so the sewer wasn't as dark as it looked. In addition, there were small lights on both sides of the sewer like the ones in the commercial district, which seemed to be used at night. There was no dirty water in the sewer, not even a trace of water, so it should have been stopped long ago. After taking a few steps inside, they encountered an iron fence that separated the sewer. There was a small door on the iron fence. At this time, the door seemed to be tightly shut. There was an iron chain wrapped around the door handle, and a rusty lock hung on it. Behind the iron fence, there was something similar to the searchlight found by Dehei. The wires behind the searchlight were connected in a very layman's way, and extended all the way into the depths of the sewer. "Huh! Why is this iron gate closed?" The beast-eared girl tried to pull the door on the iron fence. Although the girl looked like a weak little girl, Su Shenxing knew that she was a strong girl who could easily carry Dehei, who weighed hundreds of kilograms, for a distance of 5 meters. If she was on Earth, she would definitely be a tough girl. However, the iron gate on the fence didn't budge. It seemed that not only was it tightly shut, even the iron fence itself was very strong. Su Shenxing couldn't help but have an ominous premonition. Could it be that my protagonist aura is taking effect again? Why is it that other people's protagonist aura can turn misfortune into blessings, but mine always brings strange troubles? Girl, step back a little. So he simply pulled out a piece of firewood from behind him. I mean, a wooden stick, and silently cut the iron fence. "Mr. Su, you are destroying public property," Dehei immediately said. "It doesn't matter, no one else saw it." "Fine, I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening." When the iron gate fell, clanging noises could be heard from not far away. "What's that sound?" The girl's ears suddenly straightened, and it seemed that she was a little frightened. Su Shenxing threw the remains of the wooden stick aside and looked at the iron fence under his feet. Behind the small door, there was a thin iron wire that connected to the ceiling. It's a mechanism, a simple but practical alarm device. Because he had seen something similar before, Su Shenxing immediately recognized the real purpose of the thing. He kicked the iron wire and explained to the girl, "This iron wire hangs a basket, and there are some messy things in it. From the sound just now, it should be something like a can. The basket will maintain a very delicate state of balance. Once someone opens the iron gate, the basket will immediately overturn under the influence of the iron wire, and the things inside will fall to the ground and make a sound, acting as an alarm." While they were talking, 4 figures flashed out from the fork in the sewer ahead. They kept a certain distance from Su Shenqing's group. Even if he couldn't see their expressions because of the light, Su Shenqing could still feel the hostility emanating from them. "Is one of them your teacher?" Because of the firewood in his hand, Su Shenqing was now a lot calmer, and he even had the time to ask the girl. The bee-steered girl sniffed as if she was sniffing something. After a while, she shook her head. "No, they are not my teacher." "Who are you, and why did you break in here?" At this time, one of the 4 people in front of him, who was probably the leader, asked. Her tone was quite harsh. Even if she didn't say it explicitly, there was no doubt that she had identified Su Shenqing's group as intruders. In a sense, Su Shenqing, who casually broke the door, was indeed an intruder. "I'm a Pomeranian from the entertainment district, and I'm here to find my teacher." The bee-steered girl took the lead and said. "The master is not seeing guests recently." The other party refused without hesitation, but seemed to understand that Su Shenqing's group didn't mean to invade, so the hostility was slightly reduced. However, Su Shenqing's eyes lit up. Originally, he thought that the bee-steered girl's teacher was most likely not here, and that he would have to complete at least 8 or 10 missions to find her. But now, from the other party's words, it seemed that the teacher was still here, and simply didn't want to see outsiders. If the teacher doesn't see other people, what should we do if we have new friends?" The bee-steered girl asked curiously. "If there is no teacher, how can we learn and adapt?" "It doesn't matter, there won't be new friends anymore." After a moment of silence, the other party said slowly, but there was an indescribable weight in her words, "You should go back too. Now, no matter what you do, it's meaningless. Soon, all your friends will be killed by Spectre. Compared to dying in a foreign land, it's better to die in your own home." Chapter 4:12. Although the girl seemed to have inadvertently revealed some very important information, Su Shenqing wasn't most concerned about that. "Sorry, even though you said that, I still want to meet the master that you mentioned." He took a step forward, causing everyone's attention to be diverted to him as he spoke. "Impossible." The girl refused stiffly as if there was no room for negotiation. Just as Su Shenqing was thinking about what Mo Li always said when he played games, "Take down everyone you discover is a perfect infiltration." Just as he was about to follow this idea, the girl changed the topic. "Unless you can defeat the 4 of us. Speaking of which, who are you? I didn't see you when I was studying here." The bee-steered girl asked curiously. Then, the 4 girls who looked very serious revealed a look that said, "We've been waiting for you to ask this question for a long time." Under Su Shenqing's astonished gaze, they made a pose similar to the Japanese Special Forces, although there was one less. "We're the disciples who are willing to follow the master's cultivation because we admire the master's power. I'm Lubowski." The shortest girl with short tawny hair shouted loudly. I'm you." Next was a girl with short silver hair who was slightly taller than the tawny girl. "I'm Jakaria." Next was a black-haired girl who stood on one leg and was still swaying. "I'm Xiao Bai." The last one was a white-haired girl who was talking to Su Shenqing and looked like a leader. "Protecting the peace of the park area is our responsibility, the hamster guard." Wait a second, it seemed like someone who wasn't a hamster was mixed in. Even the name was different from the others. Su Shenqing felt an old curse rising up to his throat. However, if he pointed it out, he would probably have to continue arguing with them for a long time. Thus, he pretended not to hear it and clapped his hands perfunctorily. "Oh, that's amazing, that's what I wanted to say." The Pomeranian girl who realized that her line was stolen grabbed Su Shenqing's arm and said. "So? I just need to defeat all of you." Su Shenqing patted the girl's head, and she obediently quieted down. While thinking that it was easy to deal with her, he asked the hamster guard over there. "Humph, fighting is only a part of it." The four of us have our own strengths. You have to defeat us in our strengths to be qualified to meet the master. Xiao Bai said loudly. Understood. Which one is first? Su Shenxing didn't beat around the bush and asked directly. After all, it wasn't like he hadn't encountered such a situation before. Back when he hadn't inherited the holy sword, he had encountered a similar situation with his friends. In that adventure, the fierce battle of fists against flesh, the friendship of comrades who trusted each other and entrusted their backs to each other due to trust, the strategy of acting according to the overall situation, the judgment of daring to sacrifice and bear all responsibilities just to walk on the right path, the courage to face blades and magic, and a little bit of luck intertwined together to form a blood-boiling epic that was praised by future generations. That was also one of the battles that left the deepest impression on Su Shenxing. Although the situation was a little different now, he felt that his long-dormant passion seemed to have awakened again. Of course, I'll be the first. The girl who called herself Lubowski took out a stick from nowhere. It was different from the wooden stick that Su Shenxing used as a sword. The stick of the girl with short tawny hair was longer, and the way she held it reminded Su Shenxing of the Shaolin monks in the wuxia TV series. I'm good at fighting. As she spoke, she waved the stick. The stick in Lubowski's hand flew up, down, left, and right. It was really impenetrable. Under the sunlight shining through the holes, the shadows of the stick looked both real and illusory. The bright white color was very beautiful. In the end, she suddenly stood still. She probably wanted to strike a handsome pose, but because she used too much strength, the stick in her hand slipped out of her hand. With a clang, it hit the back of her head. Then, she knelt down. The Pomeranian girl's ears fell down, and her tail was between her legs. Wah, it looks painful. Su Shenxing, the hamster army, despicable foreigner, you actually used such a trick. Little White pointed at Su Shenxing and said sternly. No, this is self-destruction, right? Su Shenxing replied in a daze. You won't be so lucky next time. Wang, please. Little White obviously did not intend to listen to Su Shenxing's explanation and immediately sent out a second general. Leave it to me. The silver-haired girl said confidently, I'm different from Lubowski, I'm a wise general. So, I'll give you an intelligence question to test you. Su Shenxing thought to himself that this was not good. He did not know the common sense of this world, and it would be troublesome if he answered wrongly. However, he could not back down now. He could only wait for the other party to give him the question. Now, there are King Kong parrots and green iguanas in the same cage. There are 35 heads above and 94 legs below. How many King Kong parrots and green iguanas are there? The girl named Wang asked her question proudly. Su Shenxing's expression said, Are you kidding me? When he almost blurted out, there are 23 King Kong parrots and 12 green iguanas, the Pomeranian girl suddenly said to the silver-haired girl, You don't know the answer to such a difficult question, right? Nonsense, of course I know. The silver-haired girl retorted. Then tell me about it. You can't just tell me the answer. You have to tell me how you calculated it, the Pomeranian girl said. Only that, the silver-haired girl was so anxious that her face turned red. After a while, white smoke seemed to come out of her head. She fell backward on the ground, and her eyes turned into mosquito coils. Humph, you really don't know. The Pomeranian girl wagged her tail proudly and rubbed against Su Shenxing, asking for a reward. Su Shenxing, the hamster army, you're too despicable. I won't let you do whatever you want. Little White was so angry that her tail stood up. That's why they destroyed themselves. Su Shenxing rubbed Puppy Girl's head in a daze and said, You're all here to be funny, right? Chapter 413. I'm up next, Gakalia. The third member of the hamster army challenged Su Shenxing. I'm good at all kinds of gambling games. You can choose how you want to compete. The black-haired girl looked gloomy. I choose rock paper scissors. Su Shenxing said without hesitation. Huh. Rock paper scissors, 1 round. Rock paper scissors. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, I won. The black-haired girl was defeated by Su Shenxing in a second. Ignoring the black-haired girl in the corner, Su Shenxing looked at the last member of the hamster army and said, "Tell me, what do you want to compete in? I'm quite well read after learning from the master. How about this, you tell me a joke. If I laugh, you win." Little White rolled its eyes and thought of an idea. Su Shenxing pondered for a while and started telling jokes. Someone was curious about the life of penguins, so he went to interview a group of penguins and asked them what they were doing. The first penguin said, "Eat, work, beat Dowdo." The second penguin said, "Eat, work, beat Dowdo." He interviewed the 99th penguin, and the answers were the same. When he saw the last penguin, he realized that it was unhappy, so he asked, "Why are you unhappy?" "Ah, I know this joke." Little White snorted coldly with a look of superiority, as if saying, "Is this all you've got?" "Because it's Dowdo." "No," Su Shenxing answered seriously. "It said, because I'm alive." PFFF. A smile flashed across Little White's face. "Ah, you're smiling." The Pomeranian girl's sharp eyes noticed it. She pointed at Xiao Bai and said loudly, "TSK, you win." Little White didn't deny it, but it looked regretful. "I didn't expect the trap to be hidden in that place, oh. As expected of Little Su, you're amazing." The Pomeranian girl cheered. She turned around and saw Su Shenxing hugging his knees and leaning against the wall. His eyes were like a salted fish. Xiao Su, what's wrong?" the girl asked with concern. "It's nothing. I just feel like the beautiful memories in my heart have been tarnished by this farce," Su Shenxing said with empty eyes. As they walked further into the sewers, the environment became even quieter. When they reached the deepest part, there was actually a rather spacious room. The room was filled with water. Standing in the sewer tunnel, which was similar to the corridor, and looking down, he could only see darkness. He could vaguely see some glimmers of light, but he didn't know how deep the water was. In the center of the room was a round platform. A walkway from the sewer was connected to the round platform at the same level as the water. "This is as far as I can send you." Xiao Bai pointed at the round table. "The master is right there. Remember not to do anything too rude, okay?" "Thanks." Because there were many forks and turns in the sewers, without Little White leading the way, Su Shenxing really didn't have much confidence in finding this place. Thus, Su Shenxing and the others walked through the walkway and arrived at the master's place. The master was also a young girl, but she was different from all the beast mothers that Su Shenxing had met before. The master seemed to have a kind of accumulated calmness that greatly contrasted with her youthful appearance. She had light green hair, wore a pair of tortoise-shell glasses, and wore a white coat. However, under the white coat, one could see that the front was white, while the back and sides were dark green. Behind the glasses, her pupils were deep and calm, as if they could see through everything in the world. Even if one just stared into her eyes, it could make one calm down. "Teacher, long time no see." The Pomeranian was the first to pounce on her and said intimately. "Pomeranian, it's been so long, but you're still the same." The other party's face also showed a slight smile as she slowly replied. Then, she looked at Su Shenxing with her deep eyes. "Foreigner, you came here to ask me a question, right? As long as I know the answer, I will answer it. You know that I'm not from this world?" Su Shenxing couldn't help but be a little surprised. "Not only that, I also know that you're dreaming." The other party continued to say slowly. Su Shenxing was speechless. You're neither a physical body nor a soul. The you here is just a wisp of consciousness and thoughts in a dream. She slowly closed her eyes. Probably something is calling you, but this world is too far away from you. In the end, you'll come here in this state. I see. No wonder Su Shenxing had always felt a little strange. Why hadn't his strength recovered until now? Even if he was really allergic to seafood, it had lasted a little too long this time. He pulled up his sleeves and found that the red rash that appeared because of the allergic reaction had long disappeared. It was precisely because it was only a wisp of his own consciousness that appeared here, and this wisp of consciousness was projected through the dream, that it was so weak to this extent. Unless he summoned the holy sword, it would be difficult to even annihilate a planet. When he first came to this world and studied the light cluster, he didn't seriously contribute, so he didn't notice it. It wasn't until the next day that he discovered the abnormality. As a result, he mistakenly thought that it was related to allergies, and because of this, he subconsciously thought that it was allergies that limited him. Then, what is it that is calling me? Why is it calling me? And how do you know these things? Su Shenxing continued to ask. For a native of a planet in a world, she knew too much. Not to mention the relevant information about Su Shenxing, even the mysteries of the world itself were not something that anyone could know. First of all, as for what is calling you, to be honest, I don't know. After all, even if it's just a wisp of your consciousness, something that can cross thousands of worlds to guide you here is too dangerous for me. I don't want to have anything to do with that kind of thing, so I didn't investigate. The other party shook her head first, then she smiled and said, as for why I know these things. You may not believe it, but in fact, this is what the world told me. It is afraid of something, so it can't show up and tell you everything in person, but at the same time, the world itself has an inexplicable sense of intimacy with you, so it told you some things through my mouth. But after all, I'm just a mortal, and the secrets that I can bear are limited, so I don't know much from the world. Other than that, she then asked Su Shenxing, is there anything else you want to know? Chapter 4:14. So what happened to the humans in this world? After pondering for a moment, Su Shenxing chose a question to ask. They're all dead. At the moment of the disaster, no one was spared, the master replied softly. What's the disaster? Is it a specter? I don't know. At that time, I hadn't turned into a friend yet, so I don't have much of an impression of it. The master shrugged. Besides, I don't know the true face of the specter either. Then you. What's the matter with friends? Su Shenxing continued to ask. I thought you'd already noticed. The master looked a little surprised. She fiddled with the ends of her hair and then continued to explain, friends are humanized, mainly feminized, animals. However, this island, Ranachard, is an artificial island. There are no wild animals on the island, so the friends are all human pets. After a pause, she added in a somewhat low voice, and experimental animals. Then what's the reason for the friendization? Why does this happen? Friedinization seems to have something to do with the research project in the central laboratory on Ranachard Island, but I'm not quite sure what's going on. How should he put it? Although she did seem to have answered all his questions, when he thought about it carefully, it seemed that she did not answer anything. Su Shenxing did not like the feeling of being half-covered. Probably sensing something from Su Shenxing's expression, the master also showed a wry smile on her face. Don't look at me like that. It's not that I didn't tell you on purpose, but I really don't know. Then, she told him about her situation. I was originally a pet tortoise in the central laboratory. The intuition of animals is much stronger than that of humans. Even at that time, I seem to have felt something. After the laboratory was affected by the disaster, I escaped from the aquarium and turned into a friend on the way to the park area. Even now, I'm still filled with trepidation towards the central zone. At the same time, perhaps due to the calamity, I can vaguely sense the existence of world and obtain some information from it. After that, other pets started to turn into friends one after another. However, since they had just turned into friends, they could only rely on their instincts, and after they turned into friends, they would become the targets of the specter. That was why I started to teach them the correct, or rather, human-like behavior, and how to use the legacies left behind by humans so that they could survive on this island. Su Shenxing thought for a while, but did not find any obvious loopholes in the other party's words. Or rather, until now, Su Shenxing had never met a liar. Then why did Xiao Bai say that no new friends will be born and that all the friends will be killed by the specter? Su Shenxing used the two sentences that Little White said when they first met the hamster army as a question. The appearance of friends has a pattern. Until now, there have been a total of 4 waves of friends. Pomeranians and I were among the first wave, and it was around the time when humans were completely wiped out. You could say that we were the earliest friends. Xiao Bai and the others appeared 9 years ago. After that, a large number of friends appeared 6 years ago and 3 years ago. Theoretically, there should be one this year as well, but in fact, until today, there hasn't been a single friend this year. Speaking of this, the master's expression immediately turned serious. On the other hand, the specter's mode of action has not changed for 12 years, but for some reason, a large number of supersized specter have appeared this year, and their speed of evolution is getting faster and faster. I'm afraid that after a while, relying solely on human legacies will no longer be able to deal with them. Teacher? The Pomeranian, who was lying in her arms, straightened up and looked at the master worriedly. Then, the little girl tried her best to encourage the master. It's okay, we still have little Su. He's very powerful. I know, child. But unfortunately, this situation can't be changed by just relying on one person. The master touched the little girl's hair and said bitterly. How pessimistic. Su Shenxing did not think so. Logically speaking, as the savior, he alone had turned the tide and saved the world too many times, maybe, because my body is a tortoise. When there's something I can't solve, I'll retreat into my shell. Isn't that what friends are good at? The master shrugged, then turned around and pulled out an old book from the bookshelf on the platform and handed it to Su Shenxing. In short, if I'm not mistaken, all the mysteries are in the underground laboratory in the central area. The thing that summoned you to this world should also be in there. If you want to know the truth, go to the central area. This book is the notebook of a researcher in the laboratory. Maybe it will be of some help to you. Haven't you thought of investigating the laboratory in the central area yourself? Su Shenxing raised his eyebrows and asked as he held the notebook with yellowed pages. How much do you expect from a cowardly tortoise, that's true. Su Shenxing opened the notebook noncommittally. The notebook seemed to have been torn, and the spine was crookedly glued with cellophane tape. To be honest, in a place surrounded by water, it was lucky that the pages of the notebook hadn't become moldy. The text in the notebook was naturally not Chinese, but belonged to the same system as the text on the road signs and other things along the way. And in terms of content, this was not so much a research notebook, but something like a diary or essay. Can you read the words on it? The master asked Su Shenxing. Just barely. Su Shenxing replied casually. Although Su Shenxing's blessing of all races could indeed translate words, compared to ordinary words, this thing wasn't smart enough to help Su Shenxing adjust the grammar of the words. Therefore, when he looked at the words alone, it felt like he had flipped through an article on a computer. Of course, it basically didn't affect his understanding of the content. Then Su Shenxing raised his head and asked curiously, "Don't you understand it?" "It's not that I don't understand it, but many of the words are guesses. After all, I haven't systematically learned the human language. All the words were slowly deciphered by some simple books in the past 12 years. The master didn't insist that he could understand it and nodded honestly. No wonder Bratter and Golden Silk Bear treated the novel as a treasure map and looked for treasures all over the world. It turned out that the problem was here. Chapter 4:15. By the way, Pomeranian, I have some biscuits. Do you want to eat them? The master suddenly asked the Pomeranian girl. Hey! Biscuits! I haven't eaten them for a long time. Where? Where? The girl asked, wagging her tail. For some reason, Su Shenxing felt a little uncomfortable when he saw the girl's expression, as if his dog had been snatched by someone else. You can ask Little White. She knows where it is. Yeah. The girl opened her hands and ran down the aisle. After running a few steps, she did not forget to turn back and shout at Su Shenxing, Little Su, wait for me here. I'll get you some biscuits. After that, she ran away like a gust of wind. After the girl's figure disappeared at the fork, Su Shenxing closed the notebook in his hand and asked the master, so, after sending the girl away, do you have anything to say to me? Are you going to the central area? Of course. Su Shenxing answered without hesitation. It wasn't easy to find a way to solve all the problems, so Su Shenxing naturally wouldn't just wait. In that case, I hope you don't take the Pomeranian with you. The master said very seriously, don't worry, listen to me first. Su Shenxing did not rush to lose his temper, but quietly waited for the other party to continue. As I said before, the Pomeranian and I are the first animals to be turned into friends. But in fact, except for me, the other animal mothers in the same batch as us are not in good physical condition. It may be because they have reached the limit of movement after being turned into friends, or it may simply be because of their lifespan. Maybe you don't know, but I have known her for a long time, and I can feel that the Pomeranian is not as lively as she was 12 years ago. I'm afraid she will soon reach her limit. Su Shenxing was silent. If I'm not mistaken, the reason why she's able to maintain such a lively state is because she met a human, which is you. Because she's a mother of a pet dog, she's naturally fond of humans like you. However, this kind of ability that relies purely on willpower shouldn't last for too long. Grandmaster sighed. What's more, the underground laboratory in the central district is not a safe place. The sense of danger is like a dark cloud that cannot be dispelled. It has been hanging over Ronnie Hard for the past 12 years. You won't see a single living creature there, and you won't meet any other friends. As long as you are a living creature, you won't be able to ignore the fear in your heart towards that dangerous place. Even if you can protect yourself, will you have the strength to protect the Pomeranians? If he was in his perfect state, Su Shenxing would probably nod without hesitation, or even be more arrogant, saying that he could save him even if he died. However, the current Su Shenxing did not have the strength to do so. Thus, after a moment of silence, he silently turned around and left. De Hay glanced at the master through the camera. Then, he strode forward with his short legs and followed Su Shenxing. After they left, the Grand Master suddenly said to the hamster army in the tunnel, Lubowski, we might have something to do. After leaving the sewers, Su Shenxing began to move towards the central area. As the central area of the artificial island of Ronnie Hard, the terrain in the central area was higher than the surrounding area. According to the notebook, this was a specially designed shelter structure in case of emergencies such as tsunamis. Unfortunately, it seemed that it had never been used. Interestingly, the owner of the notebook was also called Ronnie Hard, but the notebook seemed to have been recorded after he came to the island, so Zhang Heng did not know what Ronnie Hard used to do. Perhaps in this world, this person was a very famous scientist, so it was not impossible to name the artificial island after him. According to Ronnie Hard's records, the island itself was just a test island made by humans to verify the feasibility of building a stable artificial island directly from the deep seabed. Due to some reasons, it was considered a failure, and the island was even planned to be abandoned. However, the problem seemed to have been solved and the island was put into use. In just a few years, it became a popular tourist destination. After that, Su Shenxing also found some records related to friends that the Grand Master mentioned in the notebook. As Ronnie Hard became more and more prosperous, some rich people began to settle down on this scenic island. However, some people's hearts were always more dirty, dark, and full of desires. Because Ranachard did not belong to any country, most laws could not regulate the island. Although the use of highly intelligent robots like LB had reduced the crime rate to a very small number, some more serious crimes were still happening in the dark. The laboratory in the central area was ordered to carry out a special research, grafting human parts into animal chromosomes and using cloning technology to create the half-human. Because the gene body was an animal, strictly speaking, these cloned creatures could only be regarded as ordinary animals. Therefore, they did not enjoy human rights. In a sense, they were no different from slaves in the feudal era. Due to the development of science, most of the rich could no longer find a sense of superiority in ordinary people. Therefore, they planned to create these half-humans to satisfy their desires. Although there were scientists who opposed this research, they yielded to the research institute's funding and finally the research was carried out. However, due to some unknown interference, the research did not progress smoothly. Su Shenxing was not quite sure what happened in the end because when Ronnie Hard wrote about the research, he suddenly changed the topic and began to write about his relationship with the daughter of a rich man on the island. Su Shenxing almost tore the book apart. *CK, I'm here to read science fiction, but you changed it halfway to a romance story? What the hell is going on? Later on, the pages of the notebook began to be missing. It was likely that, after being torn apart, the master was unable to retrieve all the pages. He only managed to retrieve the first half of the notebook and a small portion at the back. Therefore, there were many things that Su Shenxing saw later that left him confused. The easiest way to go from the park area to the central area was to walk along the road. Although there would be a very long uphill, it was much easier than the zigzagging stairs in other places. The central area of Ronnie Hard is a combination of the administrative district and the scientific research area. It is dominated by solemn buildings. If there is nothing important, I don't recommend that you continue, Mr. Su. When De He walked to the central area, he routinely introduced it to Su Shenxing. The administrative district and the scientific research area? I can't tell at all from his current appearance. Su Shenxing looked at the scene in front of him and frowned. Chapter 4:16. The wreckage of the tank was like a black corpse, standing silently on the ground. The outer shell of the plane had completely withered, leaving only a skeleton-like structure, showing the world that it once existed. The ground was full of craters caused by explosions, and many bomb fragments and duds that did not explode lay quietly in the craters. Occasionally, one could see scrapped military robots similar to De He, but equipped with weapons. It was easy to imagine the intensity of the war at that time. Even just standing here, one could almost smell the smoke of gunpowder. However, Su Shenxing knew that this was just an illusion. Although he did not know what the humans of the old era were fighting with, the war had ended 12 years ago. Humans lost, and they lost terribly. The evidence was the blurred text on the last page of Ranachard's notebook, which was covered in blood. No one can stop his arrival, no one can escape. The sins of mankind will be repaid by mankind, and we will all die in the end. The text looked completely different from the elegant and beautiful cursive characters in front of it. It was probably because Ranachard's hand was trembling when he wrote this sentence. Su Shenxing did not know if this trembling was due to fear, or if it was due to excessive blood loss that he could not even hold the pen properly. Wow, wow, wow. When De He saw everything in front of him, he seemed to have crashed again. The road is blocked. Is this what you care about? Su Shenxing could not help but complain. After sighing, he continued to ask, "So, where is the underground research lab?" Submit the agreement, tour of the underground research lab. Agreement submission failed, insufficient authority. De Haye trembled for a long time before he finally said, "Mr. Su, I can't take you to the underground research lab." Then let me put it another way. Su Shenxing raised the notebook in his hand. I'm going to return important research materials. Resubmit the agreement, return important materials. Agreement submission successful, Mr. Su, please come with me. So easy, Su Shenxing whistled. At this moment, the sound of running footsteps suddenly came from behind him. Su Shenxing could not help but turn around. But before he could see clearly what was running towards him, he saw a white shadow flash past. Something crashed into his arms, and he was sent flying by a strong force. Cough cough, little Su. Didn't you say that you would wait for me? Why did you leave with Xiao He? The bee-steered girl sat on Su Shenxing's stomach and complained, "Teacher didn't tell me where you guys went. I had a hard time looking for you guys. How did you know we were here?" Su Shenxing asked helplessly. My nose. The girl wagged her tail proudly. Are you a dog? No, this girl was indeed a dog. Anyway, get off my stomach. I can't hold on much longer. Su Shenxing could only surrender. Of course, he was still secretly delighted in his heart. Oh! The girl excitedly jumped off and handed the paper bag in her hand to Su Shenxing. Look, little biscuits. Su Shenxing took a look. As expected, it was the kind of dog biscuits. I don't like to eat this. You can have it. Thus, he waved his hand and pretended to be very generous. Really? Really? So happy. The girl suddenly laughed foolishly. Seeing that Su Shenxing did not follow, De Haye walked back with her short legs. But just as she got close to the bee-steered girl, the little girl covered the dog biscuit in her hand and made threatening sounds at De Haye. De Haye ignored the girl as usual. After gesturing for Su Shenxing to hurry up and keep up, it walked in the direction of the underground laboratory. Su Shenxing sighed and patted the girl's head. Don't worry, I will protect you. Oh. Although the girl did not know what was going on, she still happily shook her head and said. The entrance to the underground laboratory was hidden in a pile of rubble. Su Shenxing thought that this thing should have been a building, but it was destroyed by a bomb. In short, after clearing away all the stones and debris on top of it, he found the iron door under the guidance of De Haye. It was different from the thin metal door in the master's sewers. The door here was like a bank vault door, extremely thick and heavy. Requesting password, error. Resending request, error. De Haye tilted the camera at the door and seemed to be thinking for a while before saying, emergency, begin deciphering password, estimated time to decipher 64-digit password is 3 hours. De Haye, get out of the way. Let me try. Su Shenxing pulled out a wooden stick and said to De Haye. The door here is made of high-strength alloy and is 50 centimeters thick. A normal explosion would not be able to destroy it. I don't think Su Shenxing's wooden stick can do it. De Haye said. While they were talking, Su Shenxing had already chopped down with the stick. But just like De Haye said, the metal door did not budge. Su Shenxing pulled out a second wooden stick and chopped down on the other side. This time, the super alloy door fell down with a clang. It's really hard. I can't believe you used 2 of my wooden sticks. Su Shenxing said with a look of surprise. De Haye, wah, don't crash in a place like this. As soon as he walked into the underground laboratory, a stale smell hit him in the face. Even after 12 years, the smell of formalin did not seem to have completely dissipated. Wait a minute. Why is there formalin in the laboratory? Su Shenxing was a little surprised. What is formalin? The girl with the beast ears asked curiously. It's a preservative. Su Shenxing answered concisely. Then he saw the girl licking her lips and added, "You can't drink it." Oh, the girl looked very disappointed. You really want to drink it? There are also biological research projects in the underground laboratory, De He replied to Su Shenxing, so most of the commonly used reagents are in stock. Hearing this, Su Shenxing remembered the beast-eared girl manufacturing plan that he saw in the notebook. Nope, so he understood. He walked down the stairs, and the deeper he went, the darker it became. But the strange thing was that the degree of darkness was enough, but there was no spirit here. This strange phenomenon made Su Shenxing even more certain that this was the place where everything had happened. As he walked, Su Shenxing suddenly found a switch on the wall. So he tried to turn it on. The next moment, most of the lights in the laboratory lit up. Chapter 4:17. Sure enough, there was an electricity supply in this laboratory. Only then did Su Shenxing realize that he had forgotten to ask the master how the electricity supply on this island came about. But Su Shenxing felt that even if he really asked, the master's answer would most likely be that he didn't know. Just after taking 2 steps, Su Shenxing found a piece of paper at his feet. At first, he thought it was just a useless experiment report, but after picking it up, he recognized it from the pattern on the edge of the paper that it was a page from the book. New calendar year 953, April 7th, the weather was a little gloomy. Thorst said it was good weather. Damn it, I don't think this weather can be considered good weather at all. At most, it's only slightly better than the storm. Andian was grounded by her stubborn, hateful father. I wanted to find her using the previous method, but I was discovered by her security guard. The old man laughed at me for overestimating myself. I was enraged and pounced on him. I felt like I was a lion at that time. Of course, in the end, I was still beaten up by the security guard behind the old man. It couldn't be helped. That guy's arm was thicker than my waist. That damn old man forbade me to continue contacting Andian because I'm just a poor boy, a scientific worker with no money in his pocket. I need a lot of money to shut that old man up. Maybe, it's time to consider the research project that Thorst and the others spurned. It's just the romance part. Su Shenxing clipped the page according to the date written on it, but he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Compared to the romance part, he wanted to see some useful information more. Little Su, what's written inside? The beast-eared girl asked curiously. Nothing, just some boring things. Su Shenxing picked out some boring romance parts from the notebook to tell the girl as he continued to walk forward. Then, the girl found another page on a shelf. New calendar year 953, April 22nd, heavy rain. Unbelievable, unbelievable, unbelievable. I succeeded, but I also failed. I can't imagine that the overlapping of animal and human genes would cause such a change. Their birth seems to require more and more energy than humans. Otherwise, even if this half-human is successfully cloned, it would soon wither and die because it can't support the body. They are also human. Their eyes and moans before they die make me feel uneasy. After that, I looked at their melted remains and thought for a long time. I thought that perhaps it would be better to listen to the vice-director's suggestion and give up on this research society. But for Andian, I have no other choice. It seemed that this Ranachard was indeed an excellent scientist. It only took him 10 days to create a beast woman, although there seemed to be some problems. After thinking for a while, Su Shenxing touched the head of the girl who seemed to be worried about him. Then they moved on. The next room was filled with what looked like petri dishes. Almost every petri dish gave off the smell of vengeance, and there seemed to be some kind of strange black substance left in them. The beast-eared girl didn't seem to like the smell here. She covered her nose and looked a little dizzy. "Mr. Su, are you collecting these pieces of paper? At this time, De Hay also seemed to have found a notebook page under the petri dish. May 3rd, 953 of the new calendar, should have been a beautiful sunny day. It failed. No matter what I do, it's useless. After calculation, the energy needed to successfully create a half-human is almost the power of a city for a year. Obviously, many people don't think I can succeed. After all, it's still in the experimental period. I can't guarantee a 100% success rate. The investors seem to want to withdraw their investment. Damn it, if this goes on, won't I be able to achieve nothing? There must be a way, as long as we can find a special energy source. This guy already had a feeling that he had gone astray, Su Shenxing thought to himself. They continued to move forward, but as they walked, the road ahead was blocked by a landslide. Little Su's wooden stick can open this road? The bee-steered girl asked curiously. It's not impossible, but it will be troublesome if it collapses. Because his strength had become very subtle, Su Shenxing didn't have the confidence to fully control his destructive power. He looked around and found a ventilation duct next to him. Let's go there. Mr. Su, that's an illegal route. We are in a special situation, we need to use special means. You can call the police after this, I don't mind. Su Shenxing said sanctimoniously. Perhaps it was because this facility was underground and had higher requirements for ventilation equipment. The ventilation ducts here were quite wide, and even a robot of Dahei's size could barely squeeze in. It was a bit troublesome that there would be barbed wire fences every now and then. Fortunately, the bee-steered girl's strength was enough for her to tear the fences apart. However, this required the girl to crawl in front. This made Su Shenxing, who was following behind the girl, feel like he was doing something very beastly every time he raised his head. After climbing for a while, the girl found the exit. She took the lead and jumped down through the vent. Su Shenxing followed and found that this was a place similar to an office. There was a person's name tag on the desk. It said Win Thorost. However, it seemed like a fight had happened in this office. The furnishings around were very messy on the ground, and there were many documents scattered on the ground. Then, the girl sniffed the ground and found a notebook page in the pile of documents. This made Su Shenxing very curious as to why this thing would appear here. New calendar year 953, 13th of November. I didn't go outside today, I don't know what the weather is like. I was just going to play a joke on Thorost. But I accidentally heard a message outside his office door. This made me quickly confirm whether today is April Fool's Day. Yes. But it's obviously not. So the message should be true. Yes. I'm not a natural person, I'm a clone, and my DNA sample actually came from that thing underground. Unbelievable. My God, my mind is in a mess. Yes. Damn it, no wonder I always felt that there were a few places in my memory that were very strange and couldn't be reconciled, so my past was just an illusion input by the learning device? No wonder my name is the same as this island, called Ronnie Hard. Because from the beginning, I was born on this island as a test subject. Can I still be considered a human being? Chapter 418. The date span on this piece of paper was huge compared to the previous one, and Ronichard's tone seemed to be more neurotic than before. The thing below. Su Shenxing was very concerned about this mentioned in this paragraph. After all, compared to how the world became the doomsday, Su Shenxing wanted to know what it was. Even across thousands of worlds, it had to summon a wisp of its consciousness to this world. But so far, he hadn't found any useful information from the records, but now there seemed to be some turning point. It seemed that the goal seemed to be the lowest level of this research institute. So the group continued to move forward. This floor seemed to be dedicated to offices. The rooms on both sides of the corridor didn't have the previous experimental instruments. Almost all of them were laboratories with messy documents and some computer-like equipment. After walking for a while, Su Shenxing found an oil painting on the wall. The reason why he noticed this oil painting was that there was a bloody handprint on the oil painting. The oil painting depicted a very young woman. She was wearing an evening dress that was only worn at upper-class balls. She was sitting at a table with a fluffy puppy in her arms. There was a line of small words in the lower right corner of the oil painting. Give my masterpiece to the beautiful deputy director of the Ranachard Institute. There was a strange signature behind it. It seemed to be the painter of this painting. Other than that, there was nothing too noteworthy about this painting. Just as Su Shenxing was about to leave, he found that the bee-steered girl was staring at the painting, or at the woman in the painting. Then, a teardrop slowly slid down her usually carefree face and fell to the ground. Girl, what's wrong with you? Su Shenxing asked immediately. Huh? Why am I crying? I don't know her, but why do I feel so uncomfortable in my chest? The bee-steered girl's ears drooped, and tears flowed out uncontrollably. Su Shenxing realized that the puppy in the woman's hand in the painting was a Pomeranian, and the bell on the puppy's neck was also very similar to the bee-steered girl's treasure. Therefore, Su Shenxing could only sigh and pat the girl's head to comfort her. The girl cried for a long time before she stopped. After that, she followed Su Shenxing silently. It seemed that her mind was still in a mess. Su Shenxing didn't know how to comfort her, so he could only walk forward silently. Then he picked up a new notebook page at the edge of the stairs. New calendar year 953, July 19th, I think it's time to make a choice. If I give up on this research, I will probably have to say goodbye to Andean forever. That would drive me crazy. Therefore, there is only one choice. There are no nuclear fusion facilities on this island, so there is only one powerful energy source, and that is the thing below. After all, to be able to power the entire Ranachard for so many years without any energy degradation, it means that it contains even more power. Just a little bit, and I might be able to complete my research. After the finished product appears, the investors will not continue to hesitate. With sufficient capital injection, I don't need to think about that thing anymore. Now, let me think about how to get enough energy from that thing. Sure enough, the key is the thing below, and judging from this page of notes, the power supply of the entire Ranachard area was also provided by that thing, so there was no power outage so far. Was it some kind of energy source? No, if he combined it with the notebook he had obtained earlier, the possibility of it being some kind of legendary creature was higher. And he didn't know if it was an illusion. The more Su Shenxing walked down, the more he could feel that there seemed to be something calling out to him below. The floor below the office floor seemed to be a place where experimental animals were raised. At this time, there was not a single animal inside. However, Su Shenxing found a new note on the way. Because of the high overlap of the routes, Su Shenxing began to wonder if these notes were dropped when the master escaped with the notes. June 30th, 953 New calendar, light rain. My research has made no progress. In fact, after experiencing so many failures, I feel that I have become a little numb. The nightmares that I have been having some time ago have long stopped. There is no doubt that I am a supervillain now. But if I can, I still don't want to hear the wailing of humanoid creatures like us. But my efforts seem to have moved the deputy director of our institute. She decided to show me some good stuff. The deputy director was very beautiful when she was young. She was my type. Unfortunately, now she is, well, not old. Old woman? Still attractive? Almost, that's what I mean. Personally, I still respect her very much. After all, she did expand our small institute to its current size. Let's go. I got off topic. What I saw today really opened my eyes. Oh, my God, if I write this down, I probably won't be able to show this notebook to anyone else. Top secret information, God exists. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Before this, I have always been an atheist, but what I saw today really made me. Forgive me for being a little incoherent, but this kind of worldview is really overturned. Unbelievable. I don't even know how I got back to my room. Unbelievable. The details. Well, I really shouldn't write it down. After all, I also have the obligation to keep it confidential. Since the deputy director trusts me so much, of course I have to repay her. Unbelievable. God exists? Su Shenxing frowned. Could it be that the scientific humans in this world caught a god? You must be kidding. Then, was the extinction of mankind a punishment from God? Blasphemy seemed to be a serious crime in most of the worlds where there were gods. This kind of situation could be explained. But the problem was, even if there was a fallen god caught by humans, what did this have to do with Su Shenxing? Why was he called to this world from thousands of worlds away? No one could answer his question. But Su Shenxing didn't care anymore, because no matter what, the answer to the puzzle would soon appear in front of him. Chapter 419. Su Shenxing continued to descend, and soon, he arrived at the next floor. However, this floor looked like a fallout shelter. Although there were some items that looked like living supplies, most of the space was still empty. Along the way, they occasionally saw the airlock that had fallen, but most of the airlock seemed to be used to isolate the room from the outside. It didn't affect Su Shenxing and his team's progress. Therefore, although Su Shenxing was curious about what was in the room, he didn't waste time opening it to take a look. "Dehei, can this thing be opened?" Su Shenxing didn't ask Dehei until an airlock blocked their path. "You need an identity key or a DNA verification code to open it," Dehei replied. Su Shenxing looked around. There were no ventilation windows like the previous floors, so it was impossible to sneak in through the ventilation duct. Therefore, he confirmed the hardness of the wall. Unlike the collapsed floor, because this floor was a fallout shelter, the surrounding walls were made of metal. It was very hard and could probably withstand a strong impact. Therefore, he pulled out a wooden stick and looked at Dehei. After a while, Dehei's eyebrow-like mask tilted, then it turned around and walked back with its short legs. "Mr. Su, I'm going to confirm the situation of the floor." After Dehei left, Su Shenxing opened the airlock with 2 sticks. Judging from the cut, although the airlock was not as thick as the super alloy door at the entrance of the research institute, the multilayer composite metal structure could still ensure its hardness and toughness. Dehei, who came back after hearing the noise, continued to move down. However, it was different from the previous floors where the stairs led to the east and the west. Although there seemed to be other floors below the shelter floor, the stairs from this floor were all connected together, forming a square spiral staircase. Standing on this floor and looking down, one could see the pitch-black bottom floor. Speaking of which, this research institute looks quite advanced, but it doesn't even have an elevator. When Su Shenxing saw that he had to walk up at least a dozen stairs, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. Why don't I just jump down from here? Anyway, even if it's just a wisp of consciousness in my dream, Yunlin can still use it. Such a height won't cause any harm to me. If it's the elevator, this way. When Dehei heard this, it immediately began to lead the way. Su Shenxing almost vomited blood. Since there is an elevator, why do we have to work so hard to find the stairs? Because Mr. Su didn't ask any questions. Dehei replied in a serious tone. Is this guy angry because I'm messing around here? Su Shenxing muttered in his mind. Regardless, there was an elevator was a good thing. Perhaps it was because the people who designed the elevators here felt that the level of security was sufficient, and the elevators that went down from here no longer needed things like identity keys. Although the elevator, it was still usable. Soon, the elevator reached the bottom floor, the 14th floor. After walking out of the elevator, there was an empty room outside. The area of the room was quite large, but surprisingly, it wasn't high. The ceiling was less than 3 meters from the ground. The ceiling of the room was formed by a combination of square cold lights, so the room was exceptionally bright. But strangely, there was nothing in the room. Su Shenxing thought about it and felt that it wasn't strange. If it were him, he wouldn't hide confidential things in a place that could be reached by an elevator. Furthermore, he could clearly feel that the thing that was calling out to him was right beneath his feet. So he took out the wooden stick again. Before De He could ask anything, he stabbed it into the ground. Suddenly, the ground was pierced by his stick, and a large-scale collapse occurred. Su Shenxing threw away the remains of the stick. He hugged the bee-steered girl with his right hand and carried De He with his left hand. He pushed open the cloud scale and landed on the ground. The ceiling was still the same, but the whole space was much larger than before. The height difference between the ground and the ceiling was at least 10 meters. And the thing in front of Su Shenxing and the others made him widen his eyes. In front of them was a high platform that looked like an antique exhibition cabinet. The difference was that there were no anti-theft glass cabinets around the high platform. In addition, the thing on the high platform wasn't an antique, but a hand. To be precise, it was a human right hand. It was cut off from the forearm. Because it seemed to have been cut off for a long time, it seemed to have become dehydrated and dried up. There were some obvious scars on the right arm. When Su Shenxing first saw it, he vaguely felt that it was familiar. Then, he came to his senses. It was his right hand. It was this right hand that was the cornerstone of this artificial island, the source of energy for this abandoned city for decades, and the cause and effect of all this. There was no air flow in this space, but a piece of paper fluttered in front of him as if it was blown by the wind. Su Shenxing reached out and grabbed it. Sure enough, it was a page from the notebook. But there was no date or weather on it. There was only a very scribbled sentence. I will become God and punish this world. Su Shenxing's eyes sharpened. Do you feel it? It's indeed the Mother. White liquid gurgled out of the high platform, and then formed a human-shaped light cluster that looked like a ghost. Even without using Yunlin's perception, Su Shenxing could sense that the opponent's energy field was rapidly condensing under the interference of the right hand. Finally, a middle-aged man appeared in front of Su Shenxing and the others. The other party's appearance vaguely resembled Su Shenxing, but he was taller and thinner. The crazy look in his narrow eyes was something that Su Shenxing had never seen before. Old Su's eyes were like dead fish eyes 90% of the time. He gives me a strange feeling. For the first time, the bee-steered girl showed a look of fear and hid behind Su Shenxing. De He, on the other hand, stood there motionless like an ordinary robot as always, indifferent to everything in front of him. You're that Ranachard? Su Shenxing asked, shaking the paper in his hand. Did you deliberately show me these things? Yes, I've been waiting for you for the past 12 years. The other party let out a shrill laugh like a night owl. You must want to know what happened, but don't worry, listen to me slowly. Before he could finish his words, his head was smashed by Su Shenxing's stick. However, this kind of attack clearly did not have much effect. Almost in a breath, his head returned to its original state. He seemed to have not noticed Su Shenxing's sneak attack at all as he narrated everything that had happened in the past. Chapter 420. Fate had played a big joke on the humans of this world. By chance, a female scientist who presided over the development of the artificial island, Ranachard, found a meteorite from the universe and found a right hand in the meteorite. After a rough study, she found that the hand contained a large amount of incomprehensible energy, but this energy had a wonderful versatility. It could be easily converted into electricity or other forms of energy that had been mastered by humans. At this time, the artificial island of Ranachard could not be developed without a suitable energy source for various reasons. So the female scientist concealed the existence of the hand and secretly placed it in the deepest part of Ranachard to provide energy for the entire artificial island. She claimed that she had mastered the practical technology of controllable nuclear fusion to a certain extent and that the one on Ranachard was just an experimental fusion furnace. In this way, the artificial island of Ranachard went from a failed project to a money-making machine. The female scientist also retreated behind the scenes and only became the deputy director of the research institute on the island. After gaining a lot of wealth and prestige, the female scientist did not stop her research on the right hand. She codenamed the right hand Hand of God, and began to secretly promote the transformation of the entire research institute into biology so that she could study the Hand of God more conveniently. The hardness of the Hand of God was beyond imagination. It was as soft as a normal person's hand, but it took her nearly 10 years to barely cut a small piece of skin from the hand that could not be seen without a microscope. If this continued, she would not be able to find anything. So the female scientist finally decided to take a risk and use the immature cloning technology to clone a human sample of the Hand of God by extracting DNA from the skin. The mother of the human sample was herself. Thus, a man with the same name as the artificial island was born. After he was born, he spent a year in the culture tank to accelerate his growth, directly passing through childhood and adolescence. His memories of those two eras were all false information instilled by the learning device. Because there was no real information to refer to, the possibility of this false memory being seen through was very small. Ranachard was a genius. Since he transferred to the research institute as an intern, his excellence was recognized by everyone. Coupled with a more sunny personality because of the false memory, he soon became one of the top scientists in the institute. For most of the staff in the institute, Ranachard was perfect in every way except that he seemed to be prone to hair loss. But those people would never know that for some reason, after learning about the existence of the Hand of God, Ranachard quietly diverted a part of the primitive power in the right hand to create the Beast Woman. Although the experiment failed in the end, and only one of the hundreds of experimental subjects survived, Ranachard found that his body did not seem to reject the primitive power. In addition, he also obtained the key to turning the animal into a Beast Woman from the only successful sample, but it was a toxic vaccine for humans. However, the Beast Woman's plan did not succeed. By chance, he learned the secret of his birth. Since then, not only did he stop experimenting, but he also became neurotic. He hated the deputy director who gave him life but abandoned him, hated the experimenter who instilled false memories in him, and hated everyone who knew the inside story but never told him. Therefore, he decided to escape from this artificial island with his beloved girl and wander the world. His escape plan was perfect, and everyone's every move was within his expectations. But he missed one thing, and that was the thoughts of his beloved girl. After learning about Ranachard's identity as a clone, the girl changed her mind. So when Ranachard was about to succeed, because of the girl's betrayal, not only did all his previous efforts go to waste, but he was also put under house arrest. After the Research Institute learned about the situation, they completely tore off their hypocritical face and made Ranachard a guinea pig. This made Ranachard almost die in the experiments several times. He relied on his hatred for the world and all human beings to survive those experiments, and quietly waited for the time to take revenge. The time was soon ripe. Ranachard successfully escaped from the laboratory where he was imprisoned by the Watcher's carelessness. But he knew very well that even if he ran back to the surface, what awaited him was only a citywide search. After all, he was just an ordinary scientist, and he was definitely no match for professionals in escape and anti-reconnaissance. So he sneaked back to his laboratory, took the vaccine and the necessary tools, and sneaked into the 15th floor of the basement, where the hand of God was located. Then it took him less than a day to energize the F vaccine, and then from all the energy channels of the hand of God, the F vaccine, which in a sense should be called a virus, was disseminated. This type of energy virus would kill humans and neutralize their thoughts, forming a strange energy field, which was also known as haunts. When the surviving police found him, he had cut off his right hand and roughly grafted the hand of God onto his own hand. He made the right bet. The power of the hand of God healed his wounds quickly, and he easily killed all the enemies who came to attack him. Then the F vaccine backfired on his body through the energy channels, but also because of the protection of the hand of God, Ranachard not only did not die, but also became a semi-energized creature. Because the inferior creatures of the energy creatures were almost unconditionally obedient to the superior creatures, Ranachard, who had the hand of God, could almost command all the ghosts. In the face of this monster that was beyond common sense, the human resistance only lasted for a year before it completely collapsed. Ordinary weapons did not work on him at all. Even the lights, which were effective against mischief, had no effect on Ranachard, who had the hand of God. Not long after a year, all human beings on the planet were declared extinct. Ranachard's revenge on human beings was also completed. Chapter 421. I thought everything would end here, but in fact, it's not that simple. Ranachard stared at the expressionless Su Shenxing. The right hand on the platform slowly floated to Ranachard's side. It seemed to be connected by an invisible part. The power of the hand of God is too strong. Even if I come from the same source as it, after borrowing too much of its power, it began to gradually erode my will. If this goes on, soon I will no longer be myself, but just a vassal of the hand of God. So, it's not this hand that really called me, but you. Hearing this, Su Shenxing showed a look of understanding. Su Shenxing had some clues as to why there was a right hand of his. In the past, when he was wandering in the other world, he had died several times. Although he was resurrected, only once was his body lost. In the end, he had to use the power of the Holy Sword to recast his body and complete his resurrection. This was also the reason why the scars on Su Shenxing's body had not disappeared even though his strength had reached such a level. He carried these scars with him when he was reforging his body. Therefore, his current state with scars was his original state. Even if he recovered, he would recover according to this state. Yes, since the hand of God is yours, as long as I can devour you and replace your existence, the hand of God will naturally not continue to erode my consciousness. Su Shenxing showed an unhappy expression. If he was not in such a weak state, he would have punched Ranachard in the face. You must think I'm overestimating myself, don't you? After all, you have such a strong power with just one hand. If I really summon you, you can probably kill me with one finger, right? But unfortunately, I didn't want to fight you head-on from the beginning. Ranachard grinned, revealing a strange smile that was completely inhuman. You here are just a wisp of thought in a dream. You are too different from your real body. As long as I can eat you here, your real body in the original world will forget everything in this dream. Why, are you surprised? In order to be able to do this, even I, a genius, spent an entire 12 years to successfully research it. Very good, another reason for this guy to die has been added. What are you? Is it evil? The beast-eared girl hiding behind Su Shenxing asked. Unfortunately, neither of them. The corners of Ranachard's mouth curled up, and his smile became more, wilder. I am a god. God? The beast-eared girl looked confused. But I feel like I've seen you before. Of course you've seen me. Because you are the only surviving beast mother from that experiment, the original sample, the mother of the F vaccine. He said in a deep voice, as if he was immersed in his research at that time. You are the origin of the birth of the beast mother, the accomplice of the destruction of the human race. Your appearance changed everything. Taking you away from that old hag was the best decision I made. Seeing the look of despair on her face really made me happy. Can you please shut up for a moment? Seeing the horrified look on the bee-steered girl's face, Su Shenxing could not help but frown and said coldly to the other party. What? Do you think you still have a chance of winning? Is it the kind of swordsmanship that uses a wooden stick? Or the strange energy that wraps around your body? Ranachard continued to grin and said in a sarcastic tone, unfortunately, all your trump cards are in my hands. Why would I know? Is that what your expression is saying? Then I'll let you rest in peace while I eat you. After that, he snapped his fingers, and many translucent screens appeared around him. The pictures on the screens were somewhat similar to surveillance cameras. The position of the cameras did not seem to be high, and some of them were even filmed while moving. Su Shenxing found his face on the screen. To be exact, it was his side profile. So he looked in the direction that should be filming. What he saw was naturally De Hai's camera head. De Hai looked at the screen, then looked at Su Shenxing, then looked at the screen again, after repeating this several times. Whoa, 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 the computer crashed again. Is it strange? In fact, it's not difficult to guess, is it? Since the energy source of the entire city is the hand of God, then I, who has the hand of God, naturally control all the energy and am the owner of the highest authority. It's not difficult to use the LB's camera, or rather, it's as easy as pie. Ranachard stopped smiling and snapped his fingers. Do you understand now? Everything about you, your actions, are under my nose. One of your traveling companions is one of the culprits who destroyed mankind, and the other is a spy who sold your information. Even the notebook pages you saw were actually deliberately shown to you by me, just like this. A piece of paper seemed to be pulled by invisible silk threads and floated to Su Shenxing. Su Shenxing glanced at the words on it and found that it was the diary of Ranachard when he was preparing to escape from this artificial island. Although the words at this time revealed a sense of sadness, he still had hope. He seemed to regard the girl named Andean as the last hope of his soul. When the last hope of his soul betrayed him and the last pillar collapsed, Ranachard became the lunatic he was now. Is your performance over? Su Shenxing threw the piece of paper in his hand away. Now that the truth was out, there was no point in continuing to collect the pages of the notebook. If this is the extent of your trap, then I advise you to stop showing off. I've encountered a lot of people who made things difficult for me even at my peak. Things like yours, other than making me angry and bored, have no other effect. Su Shenxing's words made the expression on Ranachard's face stiffen. Obviously, his indifference made Ranachard waver a little. Is that so? Although I don't know where your confidence comes from, it seems that to completely shatter your confidence, words alone can't do it. But soon, Ranachard, who had regained his confidence, took a stance. The light clusters around him became more and more, and the energy field seemed to be substantial as it rushed towards Su Shenxing. In that case, we can only use force. Chapter 422. In the evening, the sky had gradually darkened. The ground in the central area of the artificial island rose high, and with a cracking sound, the ground was completely broken. Cement and asphalt fragments splattered everywhere, and even the wreckage of the tanks were blown away. A large amount of jelly-like translucent material spewed out from the ground. Then, with a dull thud, Su Shenxing and the others fell heavily on another piece of ground that was still intact. If Su Shenxing had not seen the situation and opened up the cloud scale in time, they would have been swallowed the moment Ranachard's translucent body suddenly soared underground. Run! Shielding the bee-steered girl and De Hai, who were still a little dizzy, behind him, Su Shenxing stared at the huge jelly monster with a solemn expression. If he used the holy sword of the end, Rolander, at this time, he would probably be able to finish off his opponent in an instant. But the previous problem had not been solved. In this state, he could not precisely control the destructive power of Rolander. At least, if he was not careful and used a little too much force, then even if the world was fine, this planet would definitely be destroyed. With that thought in mind, it was better to use the holy sword as the last resort. Since most of the power of this thing in front of him came from the right hand of his lost corpse, then as long as he destroyed the right hand or took it away, the opponent would not be a problem. If that was the case, he still had the power to fight with sword mastery. So Su Shenxing pulled out the wooden stick behind him and confronted the enemy. The jelly monster did not disconnect while Su Shenxing was thinking. Almost at the next moment when Su Shenxing made his decision, the ground under his feet cracked again, and a jelly-like thing between energy and matter wrapped around Su Shenxing. Su Shenxing held the stick in his hand and swung it fiercely, destroying all the jelly. But this kind of damage did not hurt Ranachard at all. Ranachard once again destroyed Su Shenxing's foothold and attacked him continuously. However, because the attack frequency was not high, Su Shenxing did not feel tired of dealing with it now. If Ranachard's attack was only at this level, Su Shenxing felt that he could even hold on for a long time. However, just as he thought so, his hand was empty and he could not touch the stick behind him. Suddenly, Su Shenxing realized that something was wrong. Although his physical and mental strength could hold on, the number of sticks was limited. Without the stick, Su Shenxing's combat strength would be greatly reduced. At the moment he hesitated, he was wrapped in the jelly-like thing. He pushed open the cloud scale and tried his best to resist the other party's devouring. However, a familiar power seeped into the cloud scale and affected his body. That was the power of the hero. Although it was not particularly powerful in the power system that Su Shenxing had once grasped, to the point that he had almost eliminated the use of that power, the advantage of that power was that it could be drawn purely from the physical body. Furthermore, it was highly versatile and could be used in almost every world. Because the source of this power was Su Shenxing's body, the cloud scale was not able to react for a while, which made Su Shenxing feel as if he had been punched by himself. Cough. Coughing out a mouthful of blood, Su Shenxing estimated that his ribs might have been broken. He had not suffered such damage for a long time. It seemed that there was no need to continue holding back. Just as he let go of his mind and summoned the holy sword of the end, the jelly monster spat him out. "What did you just do?" Ranachard's voice was full of shock. Su Shenxing, who was falling because he was spat out in mid-air, naturally had no intention of answering him. However, it seemed that because the other party had a piece of his corpse in his body, he was very sensitive to the power of the holy sword, so he was detected before he could summon the holy sword. However, after Su Shenxing came to this world, he had never used the holy sword from beginning to end. Therefore, no matter what, the other party would not have thought that even if it was a wisp of consciousness, Su Shenxing could still make a devastating attack. Just when Su Shenxing was still unable to adjust his posture to use the holy sword because he had nowhere to borrow strength from in the air, he felt a soft touch from behind. Then, as if he was being hugged by someone, his falling speed suddenly slowed down. "Yo, you seem to have been beaten up badly, King Kong." Because they had only been separated for a day, Su Shenxing immediately recognized the other party's voice. The parrot girl easily avoided the jelly monster's pursuit and said triumphantly, yes, it's me. And it's not just me, everyone is here." As she spoke, she flapped her wings and distanced herself from Rani Hadra. Sure enough, Su Shenxing saw the beasts gathering at the edge of the central area. The Pomeranian girl and Dehay, who had just escaped, were also here. However, Dehay tied a rag to his camera and was now knocking against the wall like a robot sweeping the floor. "We found the treasure." As soon as Su Shenxing and King Kong landed, Golden Bear and Bradder carried a very heavy-looking sword to Su Shenxing. Our protagonist took it and looked at it. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like something he found on a movie set. It was engraved with the words, XX Alloy Steel Special Sample, and behind it was a rather high-end name of a steel factory. Although there was no difference between this thing and a tree branch, Su Shenxing felt that this sword might be able to withstand his sword mastery a few times. Sword mastery was a kind of willpower, and a weapon entrusted with someone else's willpower was actually the best medium to exert the power of sword mastery. Lu Heng and I set up a few searchlights not far away. Well, we had to ask our teacher how to connect the wires. She raised her little face and said, "Humph, don't look at me like that. I'm just protecting my territory from the invasion of that disgusting monster. Don't misunderstand." Lu Heng waved to Su Shenxing and King Kong from the searchlight array. "King Kong will help you. Please come back safely." Then, the hamster army carried Master Oogway over like a palanquin. "I've asked Xiao Bai and the others to gather all our friends in Ranachard." She looked at Su Shenxing. "Other than the ones you know, many other friends are gathering from other directions and trying to distract the monster. We'll use the searchlights later. Although it won't destroy the monster, it can at least weaken its regenerative ability and mobility to a certain extent. I'll leave the rest to you. Although it's very irresponsible to entrust the fate of our hometown to others, we were once just pets. It's okay to rely on humans, right?" She smiled slyly, and then looked serious. "Our hometown, the future of our friends, I'll leave it to you." Su Shenxing nodded and was about to turn around and fight the monster again when the Pomeranian girl hugged him. "You're a friend who can create miracles. I've always thought so." Then, the girl let go of him, leaving only a little warmth. She stared at Su Shenxing, and then showed the brightest smile in the dusk. "Little Su is the best." "Well, that's for sure." Su Shenxing gave her a thumbs up, and then walked slowly towards Ranachard. King Kong once again took him into the air and looked down at Ranachard's jelly monster from above. But after a long time, the searchlight array did not respond. Then, Su Shenxing remembered something: all the electricity on the artificial island was provided by the right hand. So now that Ranachard had taken away the right hand, would there still be electricity on the island? The answer was obviously no. There's no other way. If this continues, there will be casualties in the beast lady who baited the enemy. King Kong, just throw me down. Su Shenxing sighed helplessly. The situation during a battle was ever-changing, and accidents had happened before. Although he felt it was a pity, he had originally planned to fight the enemy head-on, so as long as he adjusted his mentality, he would not lose anything. However, at this moment, hundreds of searchlights lit up one after another. Su Shenxing looked over in surprise, only to find that many big black robots had appeared around the beast lady. They all connected the wires of the searchlights to their batteries and used their remaining power to power the searchlights. The first to bear the brunt was Dehei, who still had a rag tied to the camera. "What an incredible sight!" Even King Kong exclaimed behind Su Shenxing. At this time, Ranachard also noticed Su Shenxing and the others flying in the sky. Although his mobility was weakened by the searchlights, he still stubbornly surged into the sky. In the end, he turned into a huge hand and grabbed at Su Shenxing and the others. But this attack also allowed Su Shenxing to see the position of the right hand. So he broke free from King Kong's claws and launched a suicidal attack on the giant hand. As if realizing what Su Shenxing wanted to do, Ranachard's upper body flowed and formed in the palm of the giant hand, and the right hand was also on his right wrist. He used the right hand to pull out a gorgeous and mighty long sword from the surrounding fluid, waiting quietly for Su Shenxing's final blow. The moment before the two were about to collide, their willpower and strength had reached the peak. In martial arts terms, their spirit had reached the peak. So, both of them swung the strongest sword they could at each other. Sword of my realm, save the world by killing. Rebel against the unparalleled father. Unfortunately, there was no fighting scene that was common in anime. Almost in the blink of an eye, Su Shenxing's sword directly cut the jelly sword and the right hand into two halves. Not only that, the effect of Sword of Mastery allowed Su Shenxing to neatly split the giant hand from top to bottom into two. Standing in the middle of the giant hand that was split, Su Shenxing breathed a sigh of relief. Because he was only a strand of consciousness, he was a little tired from using such a serious sword. In addition, when he used the sword seriously just now, he habitually shouted the name of the sword that he used to call out. He used to be ashamed of this dark history, but now he could not help but do it. As expected, he still had the heart of a Chinibu. No, 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 it must be because he was still in a dream, so he would do some strange things. Su Shenxing excused himself in his heart. However, it was not over. The jelly monster did not disappear. Instead, it collapsed into many small light orbs and floated into the sky. Then, all the spirits in the entire artificial island and even the entire world gathered together, forming a gorgeous star vortex like the Milky Way. And at the center of the star vortex was a terrifying giant eye. You must be kidding. Su Shenxing's face did not look too good. Even without Yunlin's confirmation, he could barely sense that the enemy was definitely a cosmic system state. It seemed that Ranachard's consciousness was completely defeated and was taken over by the spirit, and through the complete absorption of the right hand, it caused a mutation. If he wanted to defeat it now, the only way was to use the Holy Sword of the End. But the problem was that once he used the Holy Sword of the End, this world might be destroyed by him instead. It's okay. I'm not that me anymore. As long as I suppress my power, Su Shenxing took a deep breath, forced himself not to let his imagination run wild, and then summoned the Holy Sword of the End. Holding the hilt that he was so used to, he could not help but think of what happened when he first obtained the Holy Sword of the End. The world that the Demon King spent hundreds of years but could not destroy was completely destroyed in just 3 seconds after Su Shenxing fused the 12 holy swords. Everything in that world disappeared as a result. The only one who survived was Su Shenxing himself. Su Shenxing shook his head and threw the thought of, if I failed this time, what would happen to the Pomeranians and the others, out of his mind. He swung the holy sword at the enemy in the sky. The brilliance of the holy sword split the sky, and space was also distorted because of its power. Spiderweb-like space cracks spread throughout the entire world, and the flow of ether slowly flowed into this world. But it was too shallow. Admittedly, under this sword, the collective body of the spirit was greatly damaged, but because Su Shenxing overly suppressed the power of the holy sword, this blow did not kill the enemy. On the contrary, because the spirit was heavily injured, it began to use its power recklessly. The surrounding beasts were sucked up by its power as if they were being pulled by an invisible force, and they all floated up one after another. It seemed that it wanted to eat the beasts to replenish its lost power. Su Shenxing wanted to stop it, but there was no way to stop it. The world had become more unstable because of his sword just now. If the difficulty coefficient of killing the enemy without destroying the world was 10, then now it had soared to at least 1000. Don't give up. The Pomeranian girl who was holding the hay and was not sucked up shouted. Because Xiao Xiao Su can create miracles. He is my favorite friend. So, don't give up. I believe in you. The golden bear's body was already suspended in the air, but Bratter, who was holding the telephone pole, held her hand, so she was not sucked away. That's right. You can even defeat that big guy just now. Now, as long as you work harder, you can definitely do it. Bratter squinted and shouted at Su Shenxing as much as he could. Don't show such a useless expression. I'm still waiting for you to come and show you the more interesting parts of the commercial district. Dragonly said loudly as she tried to hold on to the signboard by the roadside to prevent herself from being sucked away. If it's Mr. Su, our safety is in your hands. Lu Heng and King Kong hugged each other. King Kong flapped his wings to resist the suction from the sky. The hamster army and Master Hamster did not react in time and were slowly sucked up. Unlike the panicked hamster army, Master Hamster looked very calm. Don't be afraid. Our world isn't as fragile as you think. Please believe in her and believe in yourself. The suction force increased, and the remaining beasts were sucked into the sky. At this moment, Su Shenxing finally made his decision. He looked at the star cluster in the sky, Ghost, and took a deep breath. Then, he frowned and roared loudly. Give me back my friends, you ugly bastard. The brilliance of the holy sword exploded again, but compared to the previous flash, this time, it soared into the sky like a beam of light. This time, the power was restrained in the beam of light, and it pierced into the eyeball of the ghost, which was larger than the entire artificial island. In the next instant, the ghost exploded. This time, it did not turn into a ball of light. Instead, it completely disappeared from the world. The remaining power of the holy sword was directed by Su Shenxing to the star ring. The star ring seemed to have been ignited and had its own brilliance. Although it was not as bright as the sun, its brilliance was gentler and quieter. From then on, the night of the planet had its own light. Although they fell from the sky and were half dead, most of the beast ladies had sturdy skin. At least, they were much sturdier than humans. Therefore, they didn't suffer any serious injuries and only suffered some superficial wounds. Little Su. You're so fierce, the beast-eared girl pounced on Su Shenxing. But this time, what greeted her was not the warm embrace of the past. She passed through Su Shenxing's body. Light spots like fireflies slowly flew out from Su Shenxing's body. He knew very well that because he used the holy sword, he was about to wake up from the dream. Little Su? I'm sorry, girl. After Su Shenxing recalled the holy sword, he showed an apologetic expression to the Pomeranian girl. I'm leaving. How? The girl looked as if she could not believe it. She stared at Su Shenxing blankly. Don't be like this, Pomeranian. Master Turtle patted the girl's head. He doesn't belong to this world. Now that his mission is complete, he will naturally return to his hometown. If you do this, how can he go home with peace of mind? Is that so? The Pomeranian girl stared at Su Shenxing for a few seconds, and then squeezed out a smile. You must have fun. Ah, okay. Su Shenxing could only remain silent. Where's our treasure? Golden Silk Bear and Bradder ran over and asked Su Shenxing. It's in that pile of ruins. If you look carefully, you might be able to find it. Su Shenxing spread out his hands, indicating that there was nothing he could do. Humph, I didn't expect that in the end. I still couldn't let you see the most interesting thing in our business district. Forget it, I'm not looking forward to it anyway. Dragonly ran over and then turned her face away, not letting Su Shenxing see her sad expression. She said something that did not match her heart. Hoo, Mr. Su, are you leaving so soon? I haven't been able to thank you properly yet. Lu Heng looked a little sad. Thank you for the flight. I'll have a good time with Lu Heng. King Kong looked more open-minded. I wish you happiness too. Su Shenxing looked at his body that was gradually becoming translucent, and showed a bitter smile. Then I'm about to, no. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by the Pomeranian. The girl lowered her head and shouted like a child who was throwing a tantrum. No. I don't want to be separated from Xiao Su like this. There are so many things that I haven't told you, so many places that I want to go together, so many things that I want to do together. I don't want to be separated from you like this. She threw herself at Su Shenxing again, but still passed through Su Shenxing's body and fell to the ground. Even the bell that she treasured fell from her necklace. Su Shenxing walked over to her and patted the girl's head. Of course, he couldn't touch her, so it was just an action. Then, he bent down and picked up the bell. Don't worry, I definitely won't forget the things that happened with you guys. As long as I remember, we'll definitely meet again. After saying that, he completely disappeared. Earth, Sakura Apartments. Su Shenxing opened his eyes and yawned. Then, he saw Emily sitting by his bed, playing with a handheld game that he got from God knows where. How long have I been asleep? Su Shenxing moved his head and asked curiously. One night. Emily raised his head and asked Su Shenxing, what's wrong? Nothing, I just feel like I had a long dream. Su Shenxing frowned in confusion, but then he gave up. Forget it, if you can't remember, then it shouldn't be anything important. Landlord, I'm hungry. Okay, I'll go make dinner. Is Song Yu not here? I remember that she's been making breakfast recently. She covered her face and ran away. What the hell did you do? Just like that, Su Shenxing walked out of the room with a depressed expression. Emily closed the handheld game and ran to the door. But before he went out, he glanced at Su Shenxing's unmade bed. A small little bell was lying there quietly. Chapter 423. The situation on Ranachard's artificial island was not good. Although mischief was completely defeated by the human from the other world, and all the beast women did not have to worry about being eaten by monsters, their living environment had become worse. As the main power supply facility of Ranachard, the artificial island at the bottom of the underground research institute fell into a state of power failure after the hand of God was taken away. The Xiaohe had consumed a lot of power to maintain the searchlights in the final battle, and it did not last long before it stopped operating due to the power failure. Without the emergency food provided by the Xiaohe on time, some of the beast women with weaker foraging abilities suffered. If it wasn't for Teacher Tortoise leading the hamster army and the other beast women who were willing to help, most of them were the ones who had interacted with Su Shenxing, to roam around and help the other beast women who were in trouble. Perhaps some of the beast women would have died. How is the Pomeranian? Mr. Ugway, who had just rushed back to the central district from the commercial district, asked Lu Ran, who was left behind. Still the same. She stays there motionless, doesn't eat, and only drinks a little water every day. The girl in a leather jacket and hood rested her chin on her hand and said in an uneasy tone, her body is very weak. It's really worrying. Who asked dogs to be such stubborn animals? Mr. Ugway sighed and said, you go rest first. I'll go see her. Thank you, Mr. Ugway. Lu Ran bowed slightly to Mr. Ugway and then walked away slowly. It seemed that she was going to look for King Kong. Mr. Ugway continued to walk for a while and came to the battlefield of the final battle that happened a few days ago. The battlefield was almost no different from that time. After all, the beast women did not have the ability to change the terrain. On the edge of the battlefield, on a collapsed building, a girl with animal ears, who was obviously thinner than a few days ago, sat on the high ground and stared blankly at the sky. Next to her was a Xiaohe with a rag covering the camera. Like the other Xiaohe, this robot had stopped because of the power consumption. Mr. Ugway knew what the girl was waiting for. But to be honest, after so many days, she did not think the situation was optimistic. Pomeranian. So she called out. The ears on the beast-eared girl's head turned. Then, she lowered her head and looked down at the tortoise teacher. It's teacher. The girl revealed a weak smile. Her chapped lips and pale face showed how terrible her condition was. But even so, she had no intention to stop waiting. It's almost time for you to recognize the truth. Instead of wasting your life here, why don't you do something more meaningful with me? Like saving other friends? I remember you used to like making friends, didn't you? Teacher Wugue tried his best to persuade him. I'm going to wait here for little Sue to come back. But the girl was unmoved. He might not come back. Even if he comes back, it might be a long time later. Seeing this, Mr. Tortoise could only shatter the girl's fantasy and show her the cruel reality. No way. The bee-steered girl shook her head stubbornly. Xiao Xiao Su is the best. Friends who could create miracles. I believe he will come back, because we have already made an appointment. As she spoke, the excited girl wanted to stand up. However, due to her low blood sugar because she had not eaten for many days, the moment she stood up abruptly, her vision turned black, and her whole body fell uncontrollably from the top of the building. Just when she thought she was going to fall to the hard concrete ground, a familiar and warm embrace caught her. Sorry, I'm a little late. Su Shenqing smiled slightly and looked at the bee-steered girl in his arms. After a moment of sluggishness, the girl let out a cheer and went straight into Su Shenqing's arms. Behind Su Shenqing, a cross-shaped space crack stood abruptly, and behind the crack, a short and simple apartment could be vaguely seen. A little girl much shorter than the Pomeranian girl tried to cross the space crack, but her short legs tripped because she couldn't cross the edge of the crack, and she fell face first to the ground. After a while, the little girl with two ponytails raised her face, covered her red nose, and said in a muffled voice, I'm angry, I want to destroy this world. Don't make trouble, I'll make you a burger when we get home. There must be a heart-shaped poached egg on it. The girl and Su Shenqing bargained. Got it. Su Shenqing could only agree to this unequal treaty at this time, and secretly planned to make her a scarlet-shaped poached egg later. You actually came back. Mr. Tortoise also stared at Su Shenqing in surprise. Originally, he really thought that Su Shenqing's words when he disappeared were just empty words. When I left, I attached a permanent indestructible protection to this girl, which can barely be used as a coordinate to recognize the way. After that, it took a lot of effort to flatten the timeline of the two worlds. As he spoke, Su Shenqing took out the bell from his pocket. And it's all thanks to this thing. Otherwise, I might have really forgotten about this world. Ah, my treasure. The Pomeranian girl stared at the bell with her eyes wide open. Yes, I'll give it back to you now. Su Shenqing handed the bell to the girl, but the girl shook her head and refused. I'll leave it with you, little Su. She wagged her tail happily and said, because I will always remember Lil Su. But Lil Su might not remember me. When you see this, you will remember me, so I'll leave it with you, Lil Su. Okay, since you said so. Su Shenqing didn't refuse and put the bell back in his pocket. Little Su? Mo Li stared at Su Shenqing with cute half-moon eyes. Ahem, I'll explain to you when we get back. Su Shenqing awkwardly turned his head away. Probably because she had enjoyed Su Shenqing's embrace enough, the bee-steered girl struggled out of Su Shenqing's arms and ran to Mo Li's side. What kind of friend are you? I'm a demon king. Although I don't know what you are, I feel so fierce, landlord, I like this kid. After being complimented, Mo Li patted the bee-steered girl who was half a head taller than her and said with approval. Putting aside the two little guys who were having a wonderful conversation, Su Shenqing greeted the turtle teacher. Can the power supply equipment below still be used? Because the battle is basically fought above, the equipment at the bottom is still intact, but without power, even if there is equipment, it can't be used. As for that, leave it to me. Su Shenqing looked confident. Actually, you don't have to do so much. Just take the Pomeranian away and treat her well. The turtle teacher shook his head and said, Lonacard is our hometown, but it's not yours. As a guest, you don't have to do this. The whole Lonacard is built on the arm of my past body. In a sense, I'm the cornerstone of this artificial island. No matter what, I can't be regarded as a guest and turn a blind eye to the problems on the island now, right? Su Shenxing hurriedly explained, and you seem to have misunderstood something. I don't intend to cut off an arm to power you guys. And this time was different from the past. Now, Su Shenxing came here with his original body. If he really cut off an arm, the power that leaked out would be enough to blow up the Milky Way in this world. As he spoke, Su Shenxing took out a cup from nowhere. If there was someone who was good at enchantment, they would probably be able to vaguely perceive that the cup also had an indestructible ward similar to the one on the Pomeranian girl. Then, he summoned the holy sword and made a small cut on his finger, squeezing out a drop of blood. It's done. Next, take this down and install it on the platform where the arm was placed before as a power supply. Su Shenxing handed the cup to the monster. According to the proportion of energy, this drop is enough to replace half of the arm, and this was only considered from the perspective of biological energy. If the Beast Lady was a super civilization that could explore the level of the space wall, she might be able to refine or remove more advanced special energy through this drop of blood. If that's the case, thank you very much. After getting used to living with electricity, the feeling of going back to the days before liberation was really terrible. Although there were now many Beast Ladies spontaneously learning the knowledge left behind by humans, there was still a long way to go before they could completely master it, considering that Mr. Ogway might not have seen what the lowest floor of the research institute looked like when there was an arm. Su Shenxing went down to help install it. At this time, the advantage of having Mo Li was completely revealed. She made a fireball to light up the place. After all, without electricity, the 15th floor underground should be completely dark. After installing the cup of blood, the lights in the research institute were indeed turned on again. After doing all this, Su Shenxing was ready to leave again. But this time, he naturally had to bring the Pomeranian girl with him. The girl thought for a moment, turned back and lifted De Hay before running into the spatial rift with Su Shenxing. After the beast-eared girl said goodbye to Mr. Ogway, she looked back at this world every 3 steps. Finally, she disappeared into the spatial rift with Su Shenxing. Mr. Ogway, who was watching them leave, raised his head. In the sky, the star ring that was lit up was shining brightly. In the coming days, there would definitely be a lot of interesting things happening on this land. Maybe when the new friends were born, he could tell them about what had happened in the past. The last human in this world, with the help of the Pomeranian and the robot, saved this land with the help of his friends. Chapter 424. Chu Nuanxia was a casual gamer. Although she had bought a home console to keep up with the trend, she still loved to play online games on PC. For example, the MMORPG White Ember that had recently appeared. In fact, compared to standalone games, MMORPG was not as good as standalone games. However, the social interaction and interaction with other players was something that standalone games could not achieve. Therefore, even though the new expansion Pack 4 White Embers had yet to be released, and the high-end players had almost explored the entire game's Easter eggs and plot, causing the entire game to be nicknamed White Chat Room by the players, there were still many people who would go online and go offline on time, just to play dungeons with their friends and boast about everything for a few hours while farming equipment. Chu Nuanxia was one of them, although she did not have time to log in every day. The guild she was in now was called the Black Dove Alliance. Almost all of them were casual players. Rather than rushing to progress, the players seemed to prefer chatting together. This made Chu Nuanxia feel like she was watching a QQ chat group every time she opened the guild channel. Moreover, when they were recruiting, the members seemed to live around Jiangjin or Jiangjin. The guild leader said that it would be more convenient for them to meet in the future. Therefore, there were not many objections to this rule. However, even though she knew that browsing the guild channel was a waste of time, she often did it tirelessly. She had nothing to do, she just wanted to see what the group of idiots in the guild were talking about. On this day, she logged into the game as usual. It was rare for her to have a holiday. Dog with a nuclear bomb is online. Undying Tree, nuclear bomb dog is good, Angel who wants to beat up Duke, so, do any of you know where the guild leader went? Dog with a nuclear bomb, what happened to the guild leader? Mo, missing. Dog with a nuclear bomb, Master Mo is online at this time? Mo, the landlord is training the dog. Sister control nest. Mo, not free. Undying Tree, the guild leader is a big idiot. Big idiot. Undying Tree, I wasn't muted or kicked. It seems like the guild leader is really not online. Tea leaves goo goo goo, Angel, did you change your avatar again? Didn't you want to *ck foo before? Angel who wants to beat up Earl, that account has been banned by the guild leader, so I'm looking for him. Cursed Eagle, 2 days ago, the president said that he got a fun game. It's probably still single player now. Angel who wants to beat up Earl, *ck, what about my main account? Undying King Shu, I'm screwed. It's not a big deal to change a new account. Look at how many aliases I have. While Chu Nuanxia was still watching the group of people go off topic, the doorbell rang. Who is it? Chu Nuanxia curiously shouted at the door. Your express delivery. The person outside shouted in a muffled voice. I'm also checking the water meter. The girl muttered to herself as she walked to the door. She looked through the peephole and realized that it really was the delivery boy. I don't seem to have bought anything recently. With this question in mind, the girl opened the door. The man handed her a small box and asked her to sign for it before leaving. Chu Nuanxia looked at the box and realized that it looked like a mobile phone case, but it was much lighter. The recipient of the express delivery was her online username, Nuclear Dog. This surprised her. Could it be a friend from the game? But she didn't seem to have told anyone her address. She opened the box and saw that there was only a black USB flash drive and a piece of letter. The girl picked up the letter and read it carefully. She realized that it was sent by the guild leader of the Black Dove Alliance. The general idea was that he found a fun game, so he sent a copy to every guild member. Out of curiosity, Chu Nuanxia asked about it in the guild channel. After a while, everyone replied that they had received the same USB flash drive. Since that was the case, it shouldn't be a prank. Thus, the girl couldn't wait to plug in the USB flash drive and open the game program. The computer read for a while before the game was officially opened. This made the girl feel a little strange. Although opening the game directly from the USB flash drive would cause some lag, wasn't this a little too much? This computer of his was capable of running the highest quality special effects even with Kazi's Blind Draw 6. The game was simple. It was a survival game similar to Don't Starve. The theme was to see how long the player could survive in the game. However, the graphics were rougher, and the gameplay was more interesting. However, those who had played this type of game would know that it was easy in the early stages, but difficult in the later stages. Since she didn't need the full screen, Chu Nuanxia opened a small window. While playing, she didn't forget to pay attention to the feedback of the other members in the guild channel. After about 10 minutes, a guild member said that his character had died. The cause of death was that he was bitten to death by a wolf. Then, the member said that he couldn't restart the game after game_over. Every time he entered the game, he would see his survival time in the game. It was about 10 minutes per day in the game. Even if he removed the USB flash drive and restarted the game, it was useless. Then, more and more guild members reported the same situation. Finally, Chu Nuanxia felt that something was wrong. Thus, she decided to close the game. However, when she placed the mouse on the close button, no matter how hard she pressed, there was no response. Thus, she decided to close the game. Mission Manager, invalid. Control plus W, invalid. Alt plus F, invalid. Chu Nuanxia was a little panicked. She simply unplugged the power source of the computer. However, a strange scene appeared. Even though the computer screen had darkened, the game window remained on the screen. And because the computer power had been cut off, the mouse and keyboard had lost their function. The girl could no longer control the character on the screen. In the end, she could only watch as the character was smashed to death by the stones rolled up by the tornado. It wasn't until the character died that the window slowly darkened. What the hell was going on? Chu Nuanxia felt that her brain was a little short. The girl wasn't the smart type, so she was treated as a mascot in the guild because of her stupidity. Now that she encountered such a situation, she was naturally at a loss. After a while, she carefully turned on the computer again and found that the desktop and various software were normal. So, after hesitating for a while, she opened the game program in the USB flash drive again. The result was just as the other members said. After opening the USB flash drive, the game didn't restart. Instead, there was only a black background screen and a sentence. Time of death, 3 days, 1 hour, 23 minutes. Chapter 425. Time of death, 2 days 5 hours 11 minutes. Emily looked at the words on the screen and couldn't help but frown. A wisp of strange black fog that ordinary people couldn't see drifted out of the screen. It constantly changed shape in mid-air, turning into a skeleton, a poisonous snake, and a yellow dog. Finally, it tried to wrap itself around the girl. However, it was blown away by the girl's sneeze. It seemed to be a very weak curse. Emily sniffed. The image on the screen in front of her had changed back to the image of the previous game because the curse had been broken. Su Shenxing's voice came from the living room not far away. You can't eat on the street. You have to pay. Pay, do you understand? This isn't Ronnie Hard, so the rules there can't be brought here. Shake hands, lie down, roll over. Jump up and throw a flying kick at the asshole cop in front of me who's adding to my workload. The girl thought for a moment and stood up from the computer. She ran to the living room as Xiao Zhengyi screamed, "Are you training your pet?" Ah! The girl with the animal ears who KO'd Xiao Zhengyi with one kick saw Emily and happily pounced on Emily. For some reason, the Pomeranian seemed to like Emily very much. She often pounced on Emily and licked her face. However, Emily didn't like this method of intimacy. Therefore, every time the dog girl pounced on her, she would quickly use her head to knock her down. Although the Pomeranian girl was very strong, she was obviously far from Emily's strength, not to mention the hardness of her skull. Therefore, after a bang, the girl with the animal ears fell to the ground with circles under her eyes. At this time, Xiao Zhengyi also covered his cheeks and recovered. Your family's composition has become more complicated. He looked at the Pomeranian girl on the ground with a sad expression, then glanced at the kitchen. Dehei, who had recovered after charging, seemed to be learning cooking from Song Yu. However, judging from Song Yu's sad cries, it was probably not going well. Why don't we go out for lunch? Su Shenxing swallowed his saliva and decided to make a safer choice. By the way, what are you doing here? Are you freeloading? Xiao Zhengyi was speechless. After gritting his teeth for a while, he finally felt that he couldn't beat Su Shenxing. No, when he didn't use the Yuanrong sword, he might not even be able to beat Su Shenxing's dog. Thus, he gave up on the idea of using force to persuade him, and started from the beginning with what he had just said. A few days ago, some people died in Jiangjin. Murder? Is the murderer a monster or a creature with supernatural powers? Su Shenxing speculated, following his train of thought. No, according to the information we have, they either committed suicide or died in an accident. Su Shenxing showed an expression that said, "How dare you make fun of me?" Ahem, after feeling Su Shenxing's murderous intent, Xiao Zhengyi quickly coughed a few times. He didn't forget to keep Su Shenxing in suspense while talking about the main topic. If that's the case, of course I wouldn't come to you. But something very strange happened yesterday. Su Shenxing expressionlessly made a look that said, "Start your performance." Mo Li sat on the side and ate oranges. The bee-steered girl was still unconscious. For a moment, only the sound of Mo Li eating oranges could be heard in the room. The scene was a bit awkward. Xiao Zhengyi coughed again and forced himself to continue. A person came to the police station and said that he would die around 3:00 in the afternoon. He hoped that the police could protect him. Although the police thought that this guy was just being unreasonable, because of his tough attitude, they couldn't throw him out. In the end, they could only deal with him coldly. At that time, I happened to have something to do at the police station, so I was there. That guy seemed to be a little uneasy, even the slightest noise would scare him. Colleagues at the police station were investigating his identity based on the information he provided. Just like that, it was soon around 3:00. At that time, he seemed to be a little nervous, so he took a sip of tea. As a result, the teacup suddenly exploded, and a few pieces of broken glass directly cut his throat at an incredible angle. The police reacted and sent him to the hospital for emergency treatment. As a result, when he was sent to the hospital, he was already dead. It is said that in addition to his throat being cut, he also swallowed several pieces of broken glass, which directly caused a lot of bleeding in his lungs. Just like that, he drowned in his own blood. At this point, Xiao Zhengyi still had a look of sadness. "It's really too scary. It feels like I'm watching Final Destination." The cups that the police station uses for guests to drink tea are not disposable plastic cups, but glass cups? Su Shenxing asked curiously. Usually, it's a disposable paper cup, but yesterday, we just finished it and didn't have any more, so we used a glass cup to make a cup of tea for him. Xiao Zhengyi also had a look of disbelief. This kind of coincidence is really scary. Of course, what's even scarier is that the guy came to our door to ask for compensation. Su Shenxing didn't comment on this. Under normal circumstances, it would definitely be treated as an accidental death, but the guy already knew that he would die at that time, which is very strange. In short, because of the strangeness of this incident, the police station still let the super administrative office get involved. "I thought that you might know something similar, so I came to ask you." Xiao Zhengyi finally revealed his purpose. Purely manipulating coincidences to achieve a goal is close to the level of influencing the law of causality. Although it's not impossible, in a low-magic world like Earth, it's hard to imagine the existence of such a level of power. Su Shenxing answered casually. Thus, the police officer stared at him helplessly, with a look that said, "Are you serious? Don't lie to me, I don't know much. Why do I feel like there's a person of this level in front of me? Don't mess around." Su Shenxing naturally noticed the look in his eyes, so he very straightforwardly protested, "I'm special, okay, and I don't know any magic. If there was a problem, physics could solve it." The two big men stared at each other like this, exuding a gay atmosphere. Woof! The little girl with the animal ears woke up and interrupted their confrontation. She looked a little dizzy, and her glabella was red because of Mo Li's headbutt. What just happened? Nothing happened. Su Shenxing waved his hand, "Let's eat first, we'll talk after eating." Chapter 426. After eating lunch that smelled faintly of lubricant, Su Shenxing planned to go to the police station with Xiao Zhengyi. When they opened the door, a gust of cold wind poured in from the outside. Due to the heavy snow 2 days ago, and the fact that Sakura Apartments was located in an alley, the front alley did not receive much sunlight. There was still a thick layer of snow on the ground. Oh! The beast-eared girl poked the snow outside with her finger, and her round eyes seemed to be glowing. What is this? What is this? It's so cold, so interesting. By the way, a shiny hair clip was clipped to the pair of fluffy ears on the beast-eared girl's head. This was the technical support from Xingyan A Dream. It was said that she refined an entertainment magic weapon with a special illusion effect. As long as she clipped it, ordinary people would not be able to see the beast ears on the girl's head and the tail behind her butt. As for why she clipped it to her ears instead of her hair, Su Xinxing guessed that the beast-eared girl slipped away without listening to Xingyan's long and boring explanation, so she did not know the correct way to use it. However, because she looked very interesting and cute, he didn't intend to remind her about it. It's snow, little Chiketsu replied kindly. It was precisely because ordinary people would not see any flaws that the beast-eared girl could now appear in front of the only ordinary person in Sakura Apartments, Chiketsu. Shwag. What's that? Can it be eaten? Because Ranachard was near the temperate zone, it almost never snowed. It could be said that the Pomeranian who had never seen snow in her life was so excited. Well, because there might be bacteria, it shouldn't be eaten, little Chiketsu said with some difficulty. But at this time, the beast-eared girl was no longer talking to her. Instead, she jumped out of the door and threw herself into the snow. Oh! It's so cold. The Pomeranian girl who became a friend obviously did not inherit the cold resistance of the original long-haired puppy. As soon as she jumped into the snow, she was frozen like a dog and ran back, shivering. It's so cold. Of course it's cold when you're wearing so little, little Chiketsu said helplessly. But this degree of coldness can't make me yield. The most important thing is fighting spirit. Unwilling to admit defeat, the beast mother once again pounced forward. However, a gust of cold wind blew past, and she once again ran back with her arms crossed and her tail between her legs. I'm freezing to death. If you're so afraid of the cold, then don't run out. Chiketsu whispered in his heart. Damn it, I will never admit defeat. Just as the beast-eared girl was about to challenge the door for the third time, her ear was grabbed by Song Yu. Not only did you run all over the place and make a mess of the floor, aren't you soaking wet now? It would be strange if I didn't feel cold when the wind blows. After saying that, she pulled the Pomeranian girl's ear and walked towards the bathroom. Go and take a good bath to warm up your body. It'll be troublesome if you catch a cold. It hurts. Ears. My ears are going to fall off. Accompanied by a pitiful cry, the beast-eared girl was dragged to the bathroom by Song Yu, who had a pressuring smile on her face. On the other hand, little Chiketsu seemed to be frightened by Song Yu's actions. He had a surprised expression on his face as he whispered, wah. It made Su Xinxing feel as if he was looking at Dehei who had crashed. In short, Sakura Apartments' daily life was put aside for now. Su Xinxing quickly sat in Xiao Jingyi's car and arrived at the police station. This time, only Mo Li was with him. Qin Xingyan had already stopped cultivating late at night. It was just that recently, the Bailu Temple branch near Jiangjin seemed to have some trouble that required her help, so she was nowhere to be seen. From the fact that she hadn't asked Su Xinxing for help, it shouldn't be something that couldn't be solved. Thus, Su Xinxing wasn't too worried. After releasing the spirit ghosts and letting them investigate the surroundings to see if there were any clues, Su Xinxing followed Xiao Jingyi into the police station. Because the murder case had just happened yesterday, the cleanup hadn't been completed yet. The area where the victim had fallen had been isolated with yellow lines and hadn't been put back into use. It's here. Xiao Jingyi was probably worried about the policemen who were still working around them. They were looking curiously at Su Xinxing, who was obviously a normal citizen. He whispered, "I used the station's equipment to check, but it didn't detect any of the common supernatural powers. It's a curse." However, Su Shunxing saw the strange black smoke that hadn't completely disappeared from the yellow lines and blurted out, "And it's the more troublesome kind." Just as Xiao Zhengyi was about to ask for more details, there was some noise outside the door. Then, a man with a big belly, who judging from his uniform was probably the police station superintendent, slowly walked in with an old Taoist priest who looked like an immortal. When Su Shunxing saw them, he was immediately amused. Wasn't that old man the one who had worked next to him when he was short of money and had to set up a stall in front of Jinghua Temple to ward off evil spirits? Logically speaking, he had a good impression of this old man. After all, he had taught him that he couldn't wear flip-flops when he was a fraud. At the very least, he had to wear sandals. The old man seemed to have recognized Su Shunxing. It was probably because Su Shunxing had left a deep impression on him. After all, he was the only one who dressed up as a rural migrant worker and wanted to be a fraud. His old face turned slightly green, but in the blink of an eye, he returned to normal. His acting skills were not below Xiao Li's. "Isn't this Xiao Xiao?" Seeing that Xiao Zhengyi was also there, the superintendent of the police station showed a kind smile. With his round face and three-tiered chin, he looked like a kind father. Although he didn't know Xiao Zhengyi's true identity, in terms of official positions, Xiao Zhengyi and him were of the same rank. It was just that they were in different departments, so most of the time, they didn't have any interactions. In the spirit of having more friends, more options, he was very polite to Xiao Zhengyi. "Sorry to disturb you, Superintendent Chu." After going through so many things, Xiao Zhengyi was no longer a greenhorn. Naturally, he went up and smoked a cigarette to chat with the superintendent for a while. In fact, judging from his current performance, at least in terms of negotiating, non-physical, skills, his level was much higher than Su Shunxing's. "I don't know who this is." After chatting with the superintendent for a while, Xiao Zhengyi vaguely asked about the identity of the old Taoist priest. "Oh, didn't you see that someone died here yesterday? Everyone felt that it was bad luck, so I invited this master back to do a ritual to ward off evil spirits." "Don't mind it," the fat superintendent replied with a smile. Chapter 427. Chu Nuangxia felt a little flustered. After receiving the game yesterday, she hadn't stopped feeling this way. Originally, she planned to find the guild president through the address in the package and ask him about the situation in the game. If it was just a prank, then so be it. No, she hoped it was just a prank. Otherwise, with this feeling, she went to the president's house, but she couldn't find him. According to the president's neighbor, the president left in a hurry yesterday, and no one knew where he went. Chu Nuangxia, who felt that something was wrong, immediately used her connections and finally found out where the president went. Yesterday, the president ran to the police station to seek asylum, but in the end, he died in an accident. Because the accident was too unbelievable, it was temporarily covered up by the officials. However, in this era of the internet, it wouldn't be long before it was exposed to the public. When that time came, it would be a huge blow to the credibility of the police. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chu Nuangxia. The ominous feeling in her heart became more obvious. She was afraid that the president also knew that the last message of the game was a real death message, in the true sense, so he ran to seek asylum. However, even if he hid in the police station, he still couldn't escape death. Come to think of it, which god of death or demon would be afraid of the police? Although the girl also told her father about this matter, he obviously didn't take her words to heart because he was in a hurry to go to work. He just thought that the girl was talking nonsense to get his attention. There's no other way, the police were unreliable, and her father didn't believe her. The only thing she could do now was to find those who had the same fate as her. Since they were grasshoppers in the same boat, she believed that they would find a way to solve the problem. Wasn't there an old saying that 3 cobblers could gang up on 1 zhuge? Therefore, the girl logged into her White Ashes game account without saying a word. She told the other members of the guild what she knew, her speculation, and her idea of forming a team to get through this difficult situation. Unfortunately, the other members of the guild thought that she was just joking. Especially the guy called Kung Shu. He said that the theme was quite interesting, and he wanted to dig a hole for him to write a novel, so that he could harm more people. Alright, even if it was the girl herself, if she hadn't encountered this kind of thing in real life, when she saw this kind of thing on the internet, her first reaction would probably be to treat it as something unimportant like a ghost story. After many failed attempts to explain, the girl could only give up on the idea of relying on others. That's not right. Speaking of which, there's another person. Chu Nuangxia started playing White Embers relatively late, so her level was generally behind the other players in the guild. Because of this, he didn't follow any groups and practiced blindly on his own. However, this method was not very efficient. Hence, she still became a disciple of a player in the game to increase the experience she gained. That person was the guild's #1 warrior, Moli. Usually, people who would come up with such cute names were either big and burly men or fat otakus. Therefore, Chu Nuangxia had always treated her master as a man. It could be seen that although Moli had a high level in the game, the way she did things was subtle and immature. It was as if she had never played MMORPGs before. In this era where the PC market was gradually declining, there were very few players like this. Hence, Chu Nuangxia guessed that her master was probably a primary school monk. In order to verify her guess, Chu Nuangxia had secretly asked her master when they were playing a dungeon together. The other party didn't seem to be scheming. Although he didn't reveal his true identity, he still gave her his WeChat ID under Chu Nuangxia's coaxing and pestering. He also told her to ask him for help if she needed any help. He also bragged that he was omnipotent, from destroying the world to killing demons and monsters. At that time, Chu Nuangxia naturally didn't take these words seriously. Moreover, because of the postgraduate entrance exam, she didn't continue to pester her master. In fact, she still didn't take these words seriously. However, yesterday, Moli should be one of the people who received the game. Based on her short message, she should have already played the game. Since that was the case, she might as well ask her for help. Just now, Moli wasn't online, so she had to use WeChat, which she hadn't used since adding her as a friend. Thinking of this, Chu Nuangxia took out her phone. The earth chi here isn't good. According to the Book of Burial, the earth chi shines from the bottom, and the power is deep but slow. The earth chi nourishes the body, and the power is floating but fast. The old Taoist pretended to walk around the police station and shook his head. He had an expression that said, "This is not going to be easy." He pointed at the center of the area surrounded by yellow lines. From what I can see, the murderous aura here is very strong, and everyone has a murderous aura. Especially this circle, the aura is fierce. If you stay here for a long time, it would be strange if nothing happened. Xiao Zhengyi didn't have much of an expression, but Su Shenxing was a little surprised. Although he didn't understand some of the technical terms, if he wasn't mistaken, the earth chi should be referring to the spiritual chi in the veins. Because of the previous incident with the veins, Jiang Jin's veins were indeed a little barren compared to other places. The place he pointed to was exactly where the black fog was located. The nature of the black fog could not be described as vicious and resentful. Could it be that this old man was really a hidden expert? Su Shenxing was quite surprised. Could it be that even he had misjudged him? But this old man really didn't have any energy waves. Or was his perception so bad that he couldn't even see through humans? Just as he was about to ask Moli for his opinion, he realized that the little girl had disappeared. Even when he asked her through the mental link, the little girl only replied, "I went to meet my netizen." That was it. While Su Shenxing was still feeling embarrassed and cursing in his heart, what the hell is this meeting with online friends? The old man with the air of an immortal had successfully fooled the police chief and asked several policemen to move a table and put it together into an incense table. It seemed that he was going to exorcise the evil spirit immediately. "Do you think this old man is reliable?" Xiao Zhengyi whispered to Su Shenxing. "I don't know, let's wait and see." Su Shenxing shook his head and ordered the spirit ghosts around him to be on guard. Then, he calmly waited for the old man's performance. Chapter 428. Ahem, when this old man is performing the ritual, no one is allowed to disturb me. After the police finished preparing everything, the old Taoist priest slowly said while stroking his beard. The police couldn't help but look at each other. "What are you guys still doing here? Get out." The fat superintendent immediately said to the other police officers. "Superintendent, isn't this a bit too much?" Some police officers expressed that they were in a difficult position. Performing the ritual in the police station was already a bit unpleasant to the public. If it also interfered with normal work, it was a bit too much. What's more, there were a lot of files in the police station that needed to be kept confidential and couldn't be casually opened to outsiders. They were still a bit worried about letting an old man of unknown origin stay here. "What do you guys know? I'm doing this for the good of our police station." The fat superintendent roared while waving his fist. However, it seemed that the relationship between the superiors and subordinates in this police station wasn't that strict, so the police officers were still making scattered protests. "But the work isn't done yet. There are already a lot of cases that are delayed due to the lack of manpower. Yeah, what if someone calls the police? Also, I have to go out later." "Boss, you're preaching feudal superstition." "I'm an atheist who upholds the core values of socialism." "Superintendent, if you're doing a live broadcast of a woman dancing to Elysium Jodo, I'm going out." "Hey, isn't that too eye-catching? The scene is too beautiful, I don't dare to look." "Ahem, only at this moment do I hate my powerful imagination, then I'll pay for the processing." Yeah, raise your salary." The group of police officers inexplicably changed the topic and made a ruckus. The superintendent orders all the bastards who just spoke to take turns cleaning the toilets for a week. The fat superintendent was so angry that he trembled and finally said with a twisted smile. In the midst of the police's complaints, the white-bearded old man smiled faintly. "This old man naturally knows that you young people don't believe in a cultivator like me, but it's okay, I just need a while, and you guys just need to stand outside the door. You don't need to close the door, you can even watch this old man perform the ritual from the door. This way you don't have to worry about this old man messing with your things, right? Sorry to trouble you, master." The fat police chief was overjoyed and said to the other policemen, "Why don't you thank the master for his magnanimity? He didn't argue with you bastards." Naturally, the response he got was booing. However, the fat director seemed to be used to being booed by his subordinates and was not angry. Instead, he looked at Xiao Zhengyi and Su Shenxing. Well, little Xiao, he seemed to be thinking about how to persuade Xiao Zhengyi to go out with him. The old man glanced at Su Shenxing's faint smile, and for some reason, he felt guilty, so he coughed dryly. "I've met these two young friends before. I believe that they won't disturb the ritual. If you're worried, Superintendent Chu, you can stay." Because he saw Su Shenxing and Xiao Zhengyi standing together and they seemed to be in cahoots, the old man decided to protect Su Shenxing and ask him not to talk nonsense. "Is that so? That's fine, that's fine." The fat director rubbed his hands and stood to the side obediently. The policemen also walked out one after another, but they didn't go far. They gathered at the door or window, watching the old Taoist, as if they wanted to see what tricks he was going to play. The old Taoist first took out an apricot-colored array diagram and spread it on the incense table. It was embroidered with the 8 trigrams of Tai Chi and some other symbols from the Book of Changes. Then, he untied a palm-sized purple gourd from his waist and put it in the center of the incense table, where the array diagram was, and pulled out the cork of the gourd. Although other people might not see it, Su Shenxing saw a gust of clear air floating out of the gourd. After a while, it became translucent. The lower half of the gourd was like a wisp of green smoke, but the upper half was the spiritual body of a stooped man. Su Shenxing heard Xiao Jingyi next to him suck in a breath of cold air. "You can see it too?" "Oh, right, after such a long time of spiritual energy empowerment, it's not strange that you can see it." Xiao Jingyi was too lazy to complain, so he whispered to Su Shenxing, "What is that thing?" After studying the supernatural knowledge of Earth with Qin Xingyan for a while, mainly about East Asian Taoism and Shinto Taoism, Su Shenxing roughly guessed the truth of that thing. That's a possession ghost. Possession ghosts were formed in all kinds of strange ways, but generally speaking, they were a kind of vengeful spirit. The depth of the vengeful spirit's resentment often determined the strength of the spirit. Most vengeful spirits remained in this world because they still had some kind of nostalgia for the real world. Therefore, they were much weaker than Su Shenxing's spirit ghosts, which were refined by cruel means and had only unforgettable hatred in their hearts. If a ghost spirit could kill a person like it was a game, then most of the vengeful spirits could only cause people to feel, I suddenly feel a little cold, similar to an air conditioner. Those that could affect the real world physically, such as lifting a piece of chalk, could already be considered as relatively powerful vengeful spirits. After releasing the possession ghost, the old man began to chant something at the incense burner table. However, after listening carefully for a while, Su Shenxing found that he couldn't understand what the old man was chanting at all. In other words, the old man was either blindly chanting, or he was saying the secret code he had set with the possession ghost. Since the secret code itself wasn't counted as a language, Su Shenxing's protection of all races couldn't do anything to it. Obviously, the possession ghost raised by the old man was a relatively powerful type. After the old man finished chanting, the possession ghost seemed to have received an order and began to cause trouble everywhere. Therefore, in the eyes of ordinary people, the police station office now looked like it was haunted. Well, that wasn't right, because it was indeed haunted. The possession ghost threw documents everywhere and tried to make it look like a fairy scattering flowers. Strange characters were typed on the computer that was still on, and some white printing paper had bloody handprints inexplicably on it. As for the fact that it didn't leave bloody handprints on the documents, it seemed that the possession ghost still had some conscience. The policemen who were watching from the outside all exclaimed in surprise. The fat police chief who was in the middle of it all felt cold all over his body and his face turned pale. He didn't dare to move. Only Su Shenxing and Xiao Jingyi showed a helpless expression. After all this time, it turned out that the old man was a liar. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.